Welcome and thank you for joining us. As soon as I get my zoning book. Wrong book. I don't have my zoning book. Okay, here we go. We're gonna borrow this. So I can figure out where it is. Okay. I want to call the February 2023 zoning meeting of the Charlotte City Council to order, and thank you all for attending, as well as those who are watching us by live streaming on either Facebook or the city's TV channel. I would like to begin with introductions of the folks at the dais, and we'll start with our Senior Assistant City Attorney.
Terry Hagler-Gray, Senior Assistant City Attorney.
Good evening, Ed Driggs, District 7.
Good evening, Malcolm Graham, District 2.
Braxton Winston, Mayor Pro Tem.
Vi Lyles, Mayor.
Renee Askew, Assistant City Manager.
Good evening, James Mitchell at large.
Good evening, Marjorie Molina, District 5.
Billy Tons, Deputy City Clerk.
The City Council begins our meeting with an invocation. This invocation is really of helping us remember that this is a solemn effort that we put in to serve this community. And today we recognize Councilmember Mitchell to give us our invocation.
Okay. Who else stand, please? Please bow our heads. Oh, wise and gracious Father, we thank you for this special day, a day you have allowed us to be here in the city of Charlotte and here to represent all your citizens. Bless us, Father, that your Spirit will guide us through this meeting. And let all believers under my voice say, Amen.
Amen. And now if you'll continue to stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. So many of you probably know what our planning and zoning process is, but just in case, I want to go through an explanation of our process. Our process begins with applications submitted to the planning staff for review. There are two types of cases that are on our agenda tonight: decisions first and hearings second. Decisions are cases for which a public hearing has already been held, and that is no additional public comment from any of you, and this is the idea that we would debate and among ourselves. Now, if you are here for a hearing, anyone wishing to speak at the hearing, please come down and see our city clerk as soon as you can and realize that you have not signed up but you wish to speak. The way that we operate this is that we will have the hearings, there'll be a staff presentation, which is usually very short and to the point, and then those that petition, or those in favor, they have 3 minutes to present their case, unless there are opponents signed up to speak. And if there are opponents, or if the staff is in opposition, the petitioner gets 10 minutes, the opponents get 10 minutes, and a petitioner gets a 2-minute rebuttal. If no one is opposed or signed up to speak, the staff provides us a short presentation. The public hearing is closed and the next public hearing is open. And then the petitions go to the Zoning Committee of the Planning Commission for review and recommendation. And now I'd like to introduce the Zoning Committee Chair and allow him to introduce the members that are joining us in person today, as well as those that are watching us by remotely. Mr. Phil Gusman is our chair. Mr. Gusman?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. I'm Phil Gusman, Chairman of the Zoning Committee of the Planning Commission. Allow me to introduce my fellow committee members that are present. Douglas Welton, Terry Lansdale, and the other members that are virtual or will be joining us shortly. Ronnie Harvey, Melissa Gaston, Courtney Rhodes, and Will Russell. The Zoning Committee will meet Tuesday, March 7th at 5:30 p.m. here at the Government Center, Conference Room 280. At that meeting, the Zoning Committee will meet to discuss and make recommendations on the petitions that have public hearings tonight. The public is welcome at that meeting, but please note it is not a continuation of this public hearing. That is the public hearing that is being held here tonight. Prior to that meeting, you are welcome to contact us to provide input. You can find contact information and information on each petition on the city's website at charlotteplanning.org. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gusman. Now we will, all right, thank you. Just give us a moment here. We're going to begin with those items, or I'm sorry, one more reminder. The City Council has made a decision that meetings of the zoning and its importance should all be heard before 10 p.m. to respect the work that's been done before we begin to debate or discuss. So any items that we may recess, if there are additional items left at the zoning meeting at 10 p.m., those items will come to the next zoning meeting immediately added to that agenda. So today I'm going to ask Dave Pettin, who will go with us with the deferrals and withdrawals that are currently been requested for a motion to the council. So we'll hear from the staff first on those items that have requested deferrals or withdrawals.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. We have several items up for both deferral and withdrawal. We'll read through those. Item number 6, 2022-095 by AHC Funds. That is a decision, or excuse me, a decision up for this evening, but they are requesting a withdrawal of that petition. Item number 14, 2022-209 Coastal Acquisition Entity LLC, requesting a deferral. Item number 15, 2021-213 Goldberg Companies, Inc., requesting a deferral. Item number 16, 2022-008 by Ram Realty Acquisitions, requesting a deferral. Item 17, 2022-059 by Taylor Morrison, requesting a deferral. Item 18, 2022-060 by Providence Group Capital, deferral request. Item 19, Appaloosa Real Estate Partners, 2022-087, requesting a deferral. Item number 20, it's by ZCM B1 LLC, that's located on the north side of, actually I might have an extra one in there. I'll go back and take a quick look. Let me skip over to the next. Pardon me. Okay, so then item 21, excuse me, Brian Iagnema, that's 2022-042, that's approximately 22 acres. That's a withdrawal decision. And then item number 23 is by Morteb LLC, that's petition 2022-075, and that's also a request for a deferral of the decision. And we do have several hearings requesting either a withdrawal or deferral. The first is item 26. This is a 2007 petition, 2007-005. That is requesting a withdrawal by the Ghazi Company. Item 27, which is 2021-177 by the Quick Trip Corporation, requesting a withdrawal. And then item 28, 2022, or 2021, -277 by Buildum LLC, requesting a deferral of their hearing. 29, which is petition 2022-037 by Suncap Property, requesting a deferral of their hearing. Item number 30, 2022-070 by Carter Acquisitions, requesting a deferral. Item 31, 2022-076, Sam's Mart requesting a deferral. Item number 32, 2022-084 by Mission Properties, requesting deferral. Item 33, 2022-091, Copper Builders, requesting a deferral. Item 34, 2022-092 by Sam's Mart, requesting a deferral. And then a few more. Item 35 by Levine Properties, 2022-099, requesting a deferral to March. Item 36, 2022-109, Urban Trends Real Estate, requesting deferral. Item 37, 2022-152 by Vinroy Reed, requesting a deferral. And then item 43, 2022-089 by Taylor Morrison, also requesting a deferral. All deferral requests are to March 20th, our next meeting, aside from the 3 withdrawals we had, but all are requesting a deferral just by 1 month. Thank you.
Move to approve all deferrals and withdrawals.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion of that motion? Hearing no further discussion, please signal by raising your hand approval of the motion. That's, I believe, unanimous. Is there anyone in opposition that I could not see? Okay, then those items that the staff ran through, we have gotten those off the agenda, so perhaps 10 o'clock won't be as significant as we thought tonight.
Next month.
Next month, that's right. They will roll over at some point. So with that,
Chickies will come home to roost.
all right, so now we go to the portion of our consent agenda for those decisions that have been made. And there are conditions, so I'm going to say that we have rezoning petitions, item numbers 3 through 13, with the exception of item 6, which has been withdrawn, may be considered in one motion except for those items asked to be separately voted on by a council member. These recommendations and petitions must meet the following criteria: had no public opposition to the petition at hearing, the zoning committee recommends approval, and there are no changes after the zoning committee's recommendation, and staff recommends approval. Are there any consent items that the council would like to pull for question, comment, or separate vote from those items 3 through 13 with the exception of 6? Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to pull item number 5, please.
All right, number 5. Anyone else that would have a comment or anything else on that item? So may we have a motion to approve the consent agenda items 3 through 13 with the exception of 6 and number 5 for adoption?
Move for approval, Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hands. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, we'll come back to number 5. Ms. Johnson, I would recognize you for number 5.
And thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to comment some of the concessions that the petitioner will be making on item number 5. There's a $50,000 contribution toward infrastructure improvements in the Mallard Creek area. There's amenitized open space in excess of the ordinance requirements and electric vehicle parking stations. So I did want to acknowledge the developer for contributing to the infrastructure improvement in District 4 and in the Mallard Creek area, and I'd like to make a motion to
Second.
approve.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion to approve item number 5, please raise your hands. Anyone in opposition?
Mayor, I just want to make sure we're including the consistency statement for all of these.
Oh, thank you very much for including the consistency statement for all of those consent items that we've just adopted. Thank you very much for reminding me of that. All right. So now we come to the portion where we begin with our, I don't think we had any exceptions for decisions. Is that correct, Mr. Pettin?
We have several just non-consent.
Okay, that are
item
not on the
decisions,
consent item, and we will start with item number 7. 6.
We'll
Right.
start with For non-consent decisions, we'll start with item 22.
22. After the green.
Yeah, 3 through 13 were consent, several were deferrals prior to that. 21 was a withdrawal, and then, so that gets us to
Okay.
22.
Item number 22. For a zoning decision, this is petition 2022-065 by Griffin Family Investments for approximately 37 acres on the east side of Beatties Ford Road and north of Sunset. It's in District 2. The current zoning is residential, single-family, and the proposed zoning is urban residential conditional. The zoning committee voted 4-2 to recommend approval of this petition, and staff recommends approval of this petition. Do I have a motion to adopt this petition with the consistency statement established by our zoning committee?
Mayor.
All right.
Just a quick change after on that one. After zoning committee.
There's a change after the zoning committee. Mr.
Just on this one.
I do not think I have that. I don't have the changes after the zoning.
It should be on page 6, I believe.
All right. All right, this is item number 22, and that means that we have to have a motion that the changes that are going to be described by Mr. Pettin should not go back or should go back to the zoning committee. Mr. Pettin, would you go through the changes that have been made since this item was submitted?
Yes, thank you, and apologies for that. Petitioner shall contribute $5,000 to CDOT for the purpose of pedestrian crosswalk across Beatties Ford Road. They would work with CDOT to determine the final location. And also, petitioner shall provide a berm, which would be planted to a Class C buffer standard adjacent to parcels 037-371-05 and 037-371-24. Both are currently owned by Amber McQueen and installed prior to the issuance of the first building certificate of occupancy for units adjacent to these parcels. And then the final change was that petitioner shall provide a 6-foot-tall fence along the site's property boundary adjacent to parcels 037-371-14. That's currently owned by the Deltas of Charlotte Incorporated. Those are all items that were worked out after zoning committee in conjunction and collaboration with the community. Staff does not believe that they warrant going back for additional review by the zoning committee, and we'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
Do we have a motion in support of the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Graham.
Yeah, just quickly, I just want to thank the petitioner for the agreement working with various neighborhood organizations, specifically Delta Segment Theta, who had a lot of interest in this petition. They were able to meet, and I see 2 of their representatives here today. Just want to thank them for their 3, for their support and their participation throughout the process. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
All right. We have a motion on the floor to not send this back to the zoning committee. All in favor, please raise your hands. Anyone opposed? No. All right. So now we'll go to the actual adoption of this petition, or a recommendation to adopt this petition. Is there a motion to approve the petition and adopt the zoning committee statement of consistency as our own?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hands and approve the petition. Okay, there we go. We're through that one. The next item is item number 23. Any exceptions on this one?
That one was deferred, and we do
Deferred.
not have any additional items that have changes after. That was the only one.
The next one is rezoning petition number 24. Any changes to that, Mr. Pettit?
No.
All right, we have a petition 2022-94 by CCC Uptown Gardens, approximately 3.6 acres. The current zoning is urban residential, historic district overlay. Proposed zoning is uptown mixed use, historic overlay. Zoning committee and the staff recommend approval of this petition. Is there a motion to approve this petition and adopt the zoning committee's statement of consistency as our own?
Motion to approve and adopt.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor, please raise your hands. All right, that's unanimous as well. All right, item 25. Anything on exceptions on this? So rezoning petition 2022-103 by Dominion Realty Partners for approximately 10 acres located on the north side of Perimeter Point Parkway, southwest of Rebecca, or west of Tyvola. It's in District 3. The current zoning is general industrial conditional. The and multifamily residential. The proposed zoning is urban residential conditional. The zoning committee voted 4-2 to recommend approval of this petition, and staff recommends approval. Is there a motion to approve this petition and adopt the zoning committee's statement of consistency as our own?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the adoption, please raise your hands. All right. Anyone else? All right, that passes unanimously.
Mayor,
Yes.
can I make a quick comment on one?
Yeah, yes.
I neglected to do it. It was item number 10. I just want to congratulate Petite Philippe, a great small business in our backyard here, who's made their way through the pandemic and challenging times on their rezoning tonight, and encourage everyone in the community to support them as best they can.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, now we are going to move into the section of our public hearings. And many of you probably know that I have grandchildren, and they have just arrived at my home. I'd like to go see them, so the Mayor Pro Tem is going to, I can watch on TV remotely, I can do that. For the hearings, I'm going to turn this over to the Mayor Pro Tem, and we'll begin with our public hearings for those petitions that are before us today. Thank you very much for allowing me to serve you, and let us also to be able to see my grands.
Say hi to them.
I will. The baby's
I will also be
coming.
joining Vi to see the grandchildren. Okay, thank you all.
She's 1 year old, guys. I mean, you know, I'm sorry. She's just one.
Never seen
So. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Lyles. Enjoy and safe travels. We'll move on to agenda item number 38, rezoning petition 2022-080 by RD South Park LLC, located on approximately 9.13 acres, bound by the north side of Roxborough Road, the west side of Colony Road, and east side of Rexford Road, south of Wickersham Road. The current zoning is R17 multifamily, and the proposed zoning is MUD-O mixed-use development district optional with 5-year vested rights. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to site and building design and environment and technical revisions related to site and building design, as well as transportation. This item does have opposition, so after Mr. Pettin's presentation, petitioner led by Jeff Brown and Bridget Grant will have 10 minutes.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. 2022-080, it's just over 9 acres at the corner of Colony and Roxborough Road, and also has some frontage along Rexford Road. The current zoning is R17 MF, and the proposed zoning is MUD optional with 5-year vested rights. As mentioned, the adopted place type on the 2040 policy map does call for Neighborhood 2. You can see Regional Activity Center also adjacent, as well as Neighborhood 1 just to the north of the site also. The proposal is to split the project up into 3 different development areas. Areas A and B are those areas that are concentrated along Roxborough Road and Rexford Road, essentially to the northernmost kind of red line with an arrow there at the top end of that project. Area A and B would contain a minimum of 10,000 and up to 60,000 square feet of non-office commercial uses, things like retail, eating and drinking, entertainment establishments, as well as personal service uses, as well as up to 730 multifamily residential dwelling units. Area C, which is everything just north of that upper red line there, that's adjacent to the single family, that would be for only up to 24 townhomes with a max height of 48 feet. Now, the petition would propose conversion of non-office commercial uses at a ratio of 50 square feet to 1 residential unit and vice versa, for a total of up to 1,500 square feet of non-office commercial and additional 30 residential units. It does have prohibitions on things such as car washes, automobile service stations, convenience stores with gasoline sales, and EDEs and banks with drive-through windows. Area A is proposing a max height of 169 feet with step downs towards Colony Road. You can see there at the bottom corner right there at Roxborough and Rexford Road, that's where we've got that highest point of the project. And then that transition towards Roxborough and Colony, you can see that drops down to 85 feet in height. Area B, the max height in that area would be 119 feet, and that building would also then step down to 60 feet in that top corner. You can see that also illustrated on the site plan diagram that we've got on the screen. And then the project itself does provide some transportation commitments, such as installing elements of loop branding crosswalks at the intersection of Rexford and Roxborough Road. That's for the larger South Park Loop project. Does contribute up to $250,000 to the loop project. Also would construct 2 new private streets, as well as a Woonerf Street between areas A and B. That's shown there in that kind of hatched area where it says Woonerf Pedestrian Street. That's a street that would function to provide some automobile services, but could be shut down to provide more of a pedestrian street with street-side dining and shopping. So that's the functionality of that Woonerf. Does provide architectural standards related to ground floor uses along that Woonerf and a minimum of 20,000 square feet of publicly accessible open space, detached lighting restrictions, primary building material limitations, ground floor architecture. Does request optional provisions to maintain surface parking between building and streets during construction phase. Would also propose up to 4 porte cocheres, building heights to exceed 120 feet. They have built in some provisions such as additional contributions to the Housing Trust Fund at upwards of $500,000, as well as 3 public art installations, and again, those contributions to the loop to help to make that request to exceed the building height of 120 feet. Stormwater facilities would be proposed within some setbacks, 6-foot sidewalk width in some areas to retain existing trees. Also proposing optional provisions for innovative street design, a master signage package, and then not requiring recessed doors along 10 feet or greater sidewalks. That helps with some of the doors swinging out into that setback or that pedestrian area. Overall, staff does recommend approval of this petition. We do have some outstanding issues related to site and building design and environment, as well as technical revisions related to site and building design and transportation to be resolved. The petition is consistent with the Neighborhood 2 place type recommendation just for that development area C where the townhomes are, and then would be inconsistent with the map recommendations for development areas A and B. This area has historically been recognized as part of the South Park Activity Center. This site does serve as an edge of that regional activity center and the edge of that existing single-family neighborhoods north of South Park. The site is located adjacent to a regional activity center place type to both the south and west, and then again to the north by that neighborhood 1. So that intense RAC district, or excuse me, that RAC kind of transition would be provided through that the building step downs in height, as well as some heights that are a little bit more akin to the community activity center, and then that N1 to the north. So again, that project does again provide some of that transition from regional activity center to community activity center in this location. Does take into account some contextual sensitivities around the site, does preserve existing vegetation, as well as a mix of uses designed with walkable pedestrian-friendly form, consistent with the development kind of found, or development type found in those activity centers. And so again, we do recommend approval upon resolution of outstanding issues, and we'll be happy to take questions following both the petitioner and public presentations tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petitioner, we have Jeff Brown, Bridget Grant, Ambrielle Taylor, Ed Allen, and Charles Humphreys. You have 10 minutes combined.
Thank you. Wait a second for the presentation to load here. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council and the zoning committee. I am Jeff Brown, and Bridget Grant and I are delighted to be here tonight to represent a related group and also to support the efforts of the Trianon homeowners who are here with the group in green tonight. It's not surprising that for a rezoning of this size, located in an area like South Park, it's involving change to a property that's 55 years old, to create energy and some questions. And that's probably especially true in this instance during the city's planning transition with the mapping and also the UDO that is pending. Having said that, we appreciate Councilmember McCarty's being involved in discussions, and we appreciate the opportunity to meet numerous times with a number of the South Park stakeholders. And we're pleased that that led to some rezoning changes that we think are pretty significant along the way, which have been communicated. We fully eliminated the office that was initially planned at 55,000 square feet. We've reduced the building height of the tallest building by 3 floors and the middle building on the site that Dave mentioned by 2 floors. And we're continuing to look at possible adjustments for the building as it approaches Roxborough Road, as it approaches Colony Road along Roxborough. As you can see here, Treon's it's a large site. It's 9 acres, 2 blocks from the mall, across from the Marriott hotels, and the large Colony redevelopment. And it also then is, as you can see, going down Rexford, office buildings moving on down Rexford.
Excuse me. Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay,
Having any
we're
trouble
good.
down
It wasn't
here.
on the screen here. Go ahead.
Okay. Tell me when it comes up if that's okay. Got it? So as you can see, the site's bordered by yellow there, and that's showing the actual development on the plan, and it's located across from the Colony, as I mentioned, hotels, and the Rexford office area. With that type of commercial intensity, we actually had felt, like the SPAN leadership who provided some input during the mapping process, that this area was appropriate for regional activity center, like the parcels around it that were mapped that way. But at the same time, and others have pointed this out, that the northern edge of the site, the Trianon site, as you can see, where the townhomes are delineated here, is close to the creek, Briar Creek, which on the other side of Briar Creek are homes that border on Wickersham Road. So Trianon has dual characteristics, a combination along the commercial activity center for most of the 9-acre portion, and then the neighborhood portion, we're in neighborhood 2. And our zoning plan that Bridget will go over and that Dave showed actually recognizes the dual nature of the townhomes along the residential edge and more of the intensity along the border of the property. Bridget's going to highlight some other project features, the design with an innovative pedestrian street that includes some smaller restaurants and smaller retail that we think will support walkability nearby and benefit the community. And we also note that the leadership of the South Park Community Partners, the organization leading the MSD efforts, recognizes these benefits, and they've provided a letter of support. Also at the dais, in addition to that letter, is a support statement from the Trianon owners, as well as some other support letters. Now, we recognize this is fundamentally a land use decision, but it's a unique one since it does involve the impacting of owners of 118 of the Trianon homes. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce Ambriel Taylor of the Trianon HOA Board just to say a few words. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. My name is Ambriel Taylor. I have lived at Trianon since 2014 and have served on the HOA Board since 2016. The decision to sell Trianon was not something our community came to lightly. We are a close community of 118 homes with varied backgrounds and ages. Some of my closest friends live at Trianon. Unfortunately, our aging infrastructure creates both a physical and financial burden, making it difficult for us to stay long-term. Our community chose Related, a developer that would build something special and not just a standard apartment project, while still being considerate of the neighboring residences, for example, with the townhome portion. Some have suggested that at Trianon we are just trying to cash in, but that ignores the reality of our ongoing maintenance costs. The rezoning is a land use decision, but we wanted you to know our situation. As you can see, we continue to show up for each other at Trianon, and we are asking for your support.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and members and council. I'm going to try to wrap this up and go over a few things to highlight the site features. When you look at the full 9-acre site, you can really see that this is divided into 3 areas. The back portion, Development Area C, has the lower height at 48 feet. The middle area starts to tier the building height toward the activity center at 119 feet. And then the tallest portion of the site is furthest away and closest to the activity center. The tallest building seeks to be directly adjacent to the activity center and in the heart of that walkable environment. There's been a lot of discussion about height, but it's important to see that 48 feet portion of the site is across the creek from that existing residential. The taller buildings are reserved closer to the commercial edge, and if you look at the site, 80% of the site is 100 to 102 feet or less. That's everything that's highlighted in blue. The white areas are the only portion of the site that exceed that 100 to 102 feet. I want you to take a look at these images because they reflect the quality of the development to be constructed on the site. It really gives you an idea that there's varied height that's intentional to provide visual interest and create streets that are internal to the non-residential that provide great complement to the loop trail, as well as other amenities within that walkable heart. In the evolution of South Park, in 1998, we developed the South Park Small Area Plan. It identified the boundaries for where intensity was supposed to happen at the core of South Park and the residential areas we needed to preserve on the exterior of the activity. In 1978, Trianon was likely one of the first multifamily developments to occur in South Park, and everything has come up around that area with it. We protected and preserved that hard boundary that was established with the 1998 area plan when we looked at the CNIP study area for where we wanted to spend money on infrastructure, and again when we did the South Park MSD. Trianon has always been in the heart of the activity center. When you look at the heights in South Park, the slide on this, or this left side of the slide shows you all of the approved heights in South Park. You can see there's a variety of heights and a variety of developments that have gone well over 100 feet on the periphery and adjacent to some of the neighborhoods. On the left-hand side is the place type map that Dave mentioned, and you can see a number of the areas are principally blue, identifying it as RAC, Regional Activity Center. There are only a handful of areas that are shown as N2B. I think it's important to note that 2 of those areas are actually zoned MUD that have a building height about 120 feet, and 2 of the other areas that were identified as N2B were R17 zoning, one of them being Trianon, and the other one being the Moorcroft apartments or condos that also go up to about 118 feet. You can see there's a variety of height in the area, and Trianon is being very cognizant of how we transition that height from the edge up into the activity center. As with all conditional zonings, we have a number of community benefits. We're constructing multimodal and pet improvements, contributing $250,000 toward the loop trail. We have significant contribution to public art on the site. We have $500,000 in contributions to the Housing Trust Fund, all that really strengthen this project as an amenity for the broader community. And it is impossible to talk about rezonings without talking about transportation. We have worked very hard with CDOT to identify improvements, both multimodal and automobile transportation improvements. And even when we did the traffic study, it included that 55,000 square feet. The improvements that we're making still take that into consideration, even though we've removed the 55,000 square feet from the overall project. I'm not going to read this summary of slides of all the benefits to you. I think we've pretty much highlighted everything that we'd like to discuss. Again, we're pleased to say that we've been working to transition that height from the edge of the community, really working on a reflection of the community activity type notion that you have lower heights along the residential edge and you tier up as you get closer to the activity center. Jeff, I don't know if there's anything, I don't know if we have time left.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking on behalf of the opposition from the community, I have 2 speakers, Barbara Caldwell and Mark Roberts. You have 10 minutes combined. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Caldwell, a Barclay Downs resident since 2005, who served on the Barclay Downs Rezoning Committee, representing our neighborhood of over 400 homes. Petitioner Related Group Properties seeks to rezone a property from N2 to build a project that is wholly inconsistent with the newly adopted 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and whose height and massing would dwarf everything around it. Additionally, the city's multiple changes to traffic flow over multiple years on Colony Road, adjacent to the proposed project, reducing traffic lanes by half and reducing the Colony Road speed limit from 40 to 35 to 25 miles per hour are at odds with the development of this size and scope. There are multiple arguments against the proposed rezoning, and if council approves this questionable rezoning after adopting the 2040 plan, after so much valuable city staff time, community debate, and expense, it will sow confusion regarding what the 2040 plan means and reduce trust in city government. Last week's decision by city staff regarding the zoning petition is primarily notable for being almost entirely devoid of supporting details. This unsubstantiated recommendation does not provide council with any support for the proposed rezoning and should not be followed by the City Council. The subject site was identified in the UDO as a transition to residential with an N2 classification. The N2B designation it received limits the height of the development to 48 feet. The UDO was passed in this past August. I ask what has occurred in the subsequent months to allow development on this site to 164 feet other than a developer requesting rezoning. Barclay Downs neighbors worked with developers through every significant development in South Park in recent years, resulting in neighborhood backing. This includes the Apex, ZOM, and the Colony Apartments developments. Our neighborhood has a history of supporting reasonable and appropriate development. When considering any rezoning, Council's only mandatory consideration is whether the proposed reclassification is consistent with the purposes, goals, objectives, and policies of the adopted generalized land plan. Further, conditional zoning district decisions shall be made considering identified relevant adopted land use plans for the area. The proposed rezoning is thoroughly inconsistent with the city's 2040 comprehensive plan, which focuses explicitly on neighborhoods having transitional tracks between activity centers and residential neighborhoods, making the city staff's recommendation to support this rezoning mystifying, to say the least. Additionally, the development's density is inconsistent with the trajectory of traffic changes over the years on Colony Road. The proposed development does not transition to any of the adjacent place types. Instead, its height and density work against the terms of the basis of the recently adopted UDO and policy map. The currently assigned 48 feet is a perfect height for a transitional piece of real estate from the Regional Activity Center at the Colony to the single-family residential neighborhoods along Colony Road. This aligns with the height restrictions placed upon the buildings closest to the Trianon condominiums when those sites were rezoned and developed within the last 24 months. Trianon residents and the City Council previously fought to restrict heights on the adjacent Colony Apartments development to protect Trianon residents. Asking to increase the density and height between 115 in some buildings up to 164 feet at the tallest point is beyond egregious and contradicts both the Trianon's and the Council's prior positions. When voting on rezoning, Council should also consider whether the proposed reclassification is compatible with the overall character of existing development near the subject property. The Trianon property is directly adjacent to single-family home neighborhoods and a 2-lane road with a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. None of the commercial uses in the immediate vicinity come close to the density of the proposed project. Additionally, none of the immediate vicinity commercial uses currently exceed 75 feet, fully 90 feet less than the proposed project. The character of the proposed project is opposed to the character of recent developments, most notably the Colony Apartments site. You may recall that the 75 feet height at the corner of Roxborough and Colony was negotiated by neighbors to protect the interests of the Trianon condominiums themselves. It is worth noting that this previous Colony project had full neighborhood support. Allowing this rezoning could be considered subjective and unpredictable, eroding trust in the 2040 plan and our city government in general. City staff and council made the correct decision when the site was designated N2. What has changed in the past few months that would cause the city to allow something so vastly different on the site? Nothing. And the history of traffic changes to the nearby stretch of Colony Road confirms this. Please honor the UDO decision made for this tract, which is now only a few months old. While there might be tracts of land where the city got the new UDO zonings incorrect, this tract is not one of them. Please vote no next month, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Greetings to the council, Mayor Pro Tem. I am Mark Roberts, 30-year resident of Barclay Downs, past president of our homeowners association. I've been through a number of these rezonings, and for the most part, we have reached agreement, and through compromise, ended up feeling like we did something we could all be proud of in the end. Unfortunately, that is not the case today. This one is different. It is a landmark, as it will shape the character of the community for decades to come. This site is the buffer and the gateway between Barclay Downs, Deering Oaks, and the Regional Activity Center. We met with the petitioners, and while some concessions have been made, we remain far apart. Now, why is that? Well, it's simply too big. It is too tall, it is too dense, and it will generate too much traffic. You've heard key metrics, but I want to review a couple of them. The proposed 48-foot tall townhouses up there on the edge. That's a welcome addition. It's consistent with your 2040 policy map. We asked for more of these. The rest, however, is inconsistent. 164-foot twin towers on Roxborough. The building does drop, I think, to 149 feet, 1 story less as it goes down the hill towards Colony. But it's up against the old Colony project that Ms. Caldwell mentioned, which is 75 feet. And that was a hard-fought contest to get it to 75. At the corner of Roxborough and Colony, the petitioner says the building will drop down to about 85 feet. All this we think is negative for Barclay Downs and Deering Oaks. Today, there are somewhere around 118 ground level living units in the site. The proposed towers here will hold 730 units. and some retail, maybe some dining, some bars. 730. That's a lot more people on that site doing a lot more stuff. I've heard the term live, work, play. However, this site has a 5-story parking structure, and you can see it in one of the earlier shots the petitioner supplied. That's for 1,200 cars, 1,200 cars. Average vehicles are about 17.5 feet long. For 1,200 cars, do the math, that's 21,000 linear feet of automobiles. That's about 4 miles. We're sitting here in the government center. I-277 loop runs around us. It's 4.4 miles long. So the cars in that deck, stretched nose to tail, would go from one end of I-277 to the other. Think about that. That's massive. The city did a traffic study, or somebody did, and said that currently there's like 850 trips originating from that site. Under this proposal, they say it'll be about 6,100 trips per day. That's more than a 7-fold increase. That's got to make an impact on something. And what does that do to our school zones? We have the largest high school in North Carolina within walking distance of this site. And our South Park area campus includes 3 schools, K-12. The city has worked with us to improve intersections and crosswalks, establish bike lanes on Colony, reduce the speed limit on Colony to 25. All that's been good, and we appreciate that. But the petitioner's request is simply too big, it's too tall, it's too dense, and it'll create too much traffic. When the time comes, please vote no. However, if you don't do that, if you vote yes, some will benefit. The T-shirt folks here for sure. Those shirts should have dollar signs on them because that's the real message. They need your vote. Vote yes, it bails them out of the problem that was created. Their deferred maintenance issues drove them to sell out. Their White Knight announced this deal last year, subject to your rezoning, and prices at Trianon started to rise. So they not only get out, but perhaps they profit. The petitioner, the White Knight, he gets a huge benefit. Your yes vote immediately increases the value of the land that they have under contract. Even if they were to then cancel their plans and resell the site to somebody else, they will profit greatly. And our friends at Moore & Van Allen, some of the best lawyers around, good people, they will certainly benefit too if you vote yes. But I want you to vote no. What about our neighborhood and our community overall? What consideration do we get from all of this? I would say not very much. Your no vote will send this back to the petitioner. They should scale down this proposal. And that might provide adequate consideration to the existing community to where we could get behind this. Reduce the size, reduce the height, reduce the density, and that'll reduce the traffic. I ask you to seriously consider the power of your vote. Your decision will impact our neighborhood for decades. Looking back, will your vote be viewed as having done the right thing for our community, or just a vote that empowered yet another developer's dream to make Charlotte more and more like Atlanta? Please, when the time comes, vote no. Thank you.
Perfect timing. The petitioner, you have 2 minutes for a rebuttal.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We appreciate the comments, Mr. Roberts and Ms. Humphrey. The reality of the matter is that we do have a 9-acre site, so we have to start from the proposition of scale. And what I mean by that is, in terms of traffic numbers, in terms of number of cars parked, this is not this is effectively 3 different parcels that are happening here. So it's a bigger site. You're going to have larger numbers as a result of that. The density for the actual site, when you can consider the townhomes and otherwise, is comparable to the density that we have been seeing in South Park now for a number of years. As it relates to the 2040 plan, I know it's a transition period, but to think that the Trianon at 48 feet in height will be locked into that, and to think that across the street, Moorcroft Place, which is 118 feet tall, also would become non-conforming based on the mapping, I think recognizes the mapping was not a precision instrument in all instances. It does mean something. It is part of your policy guidelines, but there are exceptions, and this is an example of that. To think that the Trianon, located across and next door to Regional Activity Center, which will have 150-foot heights by right, and then 275 with bonuses would be locked into 48 feet. Just doesn't relate to the reality of the situation. In terms of the 75-foot building that's been referenced numerous times in the colony, that is true. That was limited based upon the project that we're dealing with now, but that was 7 years ago. And there is a 160-foot building that is coming within the colony and a 140-foot building closer to Sharon. What we respectfully would say is that the Trianon is a large site that will provide the transition that's being referred to, but it will also recognize the change with the activity center at the edge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Recognize Mrs. Bakari for questions and comments.
Thank you. So let me just bring everyone up to speed here for a second. Is that on?
No, it don't sound like it.
So over the last year plus, there have been a lot of parties that have worked an awful lot, and I want to start by recognizing that. And it brings us to today where there are, in my opinion, 4 major stakeholders in this specific deal that are going to help inform us what we should ultimately do. One is the petitioner, the developer, right? You guys have worked hard. You've had a lot of meetings. You, in my opinion, have come to the table and done so in good faith, as I had requested in the beginning. The second is Trianon, the group you see here in the green shirts. I would say the same for them. They have come together. They've worked very hard in a tough situation. And I would say, aside from all the work you've done, a specific call out and kudos to Brian Zapata, who worked long, hard hours to figure out ultimately really a magical deal for you guys in the situation you're in. And I recognize that, and that's another complicated dimension of this. The third are the neighbors, Barclay Downs across the street, and Deering Oaks, and then several others. You all have worked exceptionally hard as well, being at the table, making the case, again, in my assessment, working in good faith, which is exactly what I asked you guys to do. So that's 3 of the 4 major stakeholders. And the problem we face today is, despite over a year of good faith, hard work, we are having multiple parties ask us to do multiple different things. You weren't able to come to a singular conclusion. That's okay. Can't always happen that way. But again, you checked a very important box, which was working hard and in good faith. So I just wanted to start there. So the fourth group, and I mentioned this one last, is staff and city staff. And I greatly appreciate all the work you guys do, but this is complicated, and I had to and have to rely on you all very heavily as it relates to how to parse this deal out. And I think we're all going to have a part of this conversation right now. We went from the last 2.5, 3 years of the most intense debate and fighting and voting ever with the comp plan and the UDO and the place type mapping. And ultimately, the broader theme of all of that was we need to move from a deal-making city to a planning city, a city where you can ultimately look at any of the guardrails, any of the rules, and kind of say, that's what it should be. Do we want to overrule it? The problem with that and where we are now is I clearly articulated to staff, I said, look, we're in a tough spot. All of us here are going to have to make a decision. What I need you guys to do, even though we're considering this grandfathered in before the UDO takes effect in June 1st, there's been a lot of years of work that have come to this moment where we have to at least take that into context as we're making a decision. And I said, staff, I really need you guys, if you're going to ultimately make a recommendation to approve this, to support this, to tell us in very black and white terms why this should be ultimately what the zoning, the place type should be. And again, to make it simple, it was R17 before this, right? That's what it is now, but it will go ultimately to N2, neighborhood. For those of you who don't follow that stuff, think about neighborhood. So what I said to him was, if you say you're supporting it, you can't ultimately let that be neighborhood, because neighborhood doesn't conform with this request. Now, if you're going to go and jump to activity center, the other one, this does conform with that. But you're going to need to explain to all of us why this should be activity center, community or regional, whatever it may be, because that's the only kind of approach that would make sense. And ultimately, it can't be because there was non-conforming uses across the street or in other places historically. It has to be for reasons X, Y, and Z. This site and every other site we're about to rezone across this entire city for the next 2 years, this is the consistent approach that we're going to take and we're going to do. So staff didn't do that, unfortunately. They came out and said, we support it. We know it's inconsistent with N2. However, it is consistent with the community activity center, and therefore they go down the reasons. And the problem that cites for me is it doesn't tell me why it should be community activity center. In fact, we completely jumped over the step. Last time any of us heard about this was in the whole process where we said, staff said, yep, it was R17 and it's going to be N2. So somehow behind the scenes, without any of our knowledge, it became okay for it to be community activity center. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but someone's got to explain it. Someone's got to say this is why it should be, because if not, we're not a planning city, we're a deal-making city. And someone got to a point where they wanted to support a deal and then reverse engineered their explanation. And with this number of trips, with this number of community members on different sides, that's not fair to you guys. With the hundreds, if not thousands of rezonings from lower to higher density that we're going to have to do over the next 2 years in UDO alignment, we need precedent. We need to know what we're going to do, and we need to do it consistent every time. And the example I want to make sure everyone gets and is clear of, here's a precedent-setting example, right? This to me is policy level. When they had R17 and they looked across this whole city, things just like Trianon and other places, they said, we're going to map this to neighborhood, to N2 in this case. And the reason why they mapped it to neighborhood, they could have mapped it to activity center. And I drilled into this over the last year in your guys' process. Their reasoning behind it, the policy level, consistent citywide, was these places like Trianon are ultimately naturally occurring affordable housing. And if we come in, we don't want to naturally go and upzone it so they get demolished and ultimately gentrify or create an impact to affordable housing. Whether you agree or disagree with that, you can step back and say that's a citywide policy statement. Now, did we approve all that or did we know it? I'm not sure. But putting that aside, that's a policy statement. So what I'm asking now is somehow it went from N2 in that policy statement, and now it's going to jump over to activity center. And I'm not an expert, I'm not a city planner, but I know that if we're going to address this countless times, it can't be how we feel or what groups of this community turn out opposed to it or for it. It's got to be something that makes sense. And right now, I don't see it. It's not described. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I didn't get that from the staff. And I've talked to you guys about it. I don't mean to throw you under the bus, but we had this exact same conversation today. It was a failure to get to the clear statement of what I needed from staff. So now I'm going to ask the zoning committee the same challenge. You guys have the ball on this next. If I had to vote for this right now at this moment, I would vote no. But I need you guys, experts, to come and tell us, okay, why should this be N2 or why should this be activity center in some way? Because one makes it consistent and we should approve it, and one makes it inconsistent and we shouldn't. And that'll get us to a planning city. And then once we see all that, it's not staff or zoning committee playing politics. It's you guys calling balls and strikes, and here's what it is. And then we decide ultimately what the answer should be. And I think the final thing I'll say on this is why I know that this is difficult and controversial, and I'm not a planning expert, I can't emphasize that enough, is I see both sides have worked hard. I see both sides are doing really good work on this. And when I walk on Roxborough and Rexford, it feels like an activity center to me. And when I walk on Colony, it feels like a neighborhood. So it feels like, to the untrained eye here, that both sides have a claim. So I need an expert to tell me what the position should be, and then we as a council can overrule it or not. But my expectation and hope is that we then make that same decision every single time for the next 2 years, and it doesn't matter who comes out, it doesn't matter who's mad or happy. That's what we do in a precedent-setting way. So I hope that you guys are up for the challenge of taking that on. And to my colleagues, I really can't wait to hear your feedback and thoughts on kind of where we are ultimately here.
I have a couple questions for staff, and then I'll get to you, Mr. Triggs. Staff, I need just a quick reminder. We are in a strange place. Am I remembering correctly that mud zoning districts, which the petitioner is asking for, mud zoning districts, they don't have an implicit apples-to-apples policy translation into our adopted place types policy?
So conventional mud in the UDO under the translation table in Chapter 3 would go from mud to Community Activity Center 2. So the challenge is we don't have a lot of conventional mud zoning districts out there. A lot of them are mud conditional or mud optional. But if we have conventional mud, that does translate directly to Community Activity Center 2.
I thought I read and I thought I heard you say that the way this petition is presented, it will result in the translation to two separate place type policies on the map.
So, yeah, if we could go back to the site plan. So staff, when we reviewed the petition, we saw Development Area C is consistent with what would be found in a Neighborhood 2 place type, which is single-family attached townhomes at 48 feet in height. That's consistent across the board with all of our Neighborhood 2 zoning designations and districts. So we felt that that portion of the project was consistent with the place type mapping, so that would remain unchanged. And the rest of that petition south of where those townhomes are, Development Area B and A, are inconsistent with Neighborhood 2, and that's where that translation to Community Activity Center would be, would occur if it was approved.
So, okay, so would it be would it be an assumption that when the translation happens in the future that the Area C would remain N2?
Yeah, so Area C would remain N2. The site itself wouldn't translate to any UDO district because it's a conditional district. So it would stay Mud O in perpetuity unless somebody came in to rezone it or unless, there was some alignment rezoning years down the road that might, would change that. But Mud O will not translate on June 1st because it's a conditional district. So all conditional districts stay intact. The place type would also remain with that Neighborhood 2. That policy map wouldn't change also unless there was a map adoption or a map amendment through approval, either through the rezoning process or through map adoption by City Council.
Okay. I guess the question I would have there is does that transition, that policy transition work for the community? Maybe this is something, Mr. Bakari, we can talk about moving forward, or would there still be that kind of theoretical challenge, being that would still be an end to abutting the community center, even though it kind of works to, it seems to assuage some of the concerns that the Barclay Downs community is presenting. Maybe it's something we can talk about. That's what I got. You said you were listening. That's what I got from this presentation. So. Mr. Driggs. Oh, last thing. I think we might have covered this, but it says 5 years vested rights in our book.
This one is requesting 5 years vested rights. A project of this size and scale, we typically don't have significant concerns at a staff level on vested rights for this. Smaller projects we don't, but large mixed-use projects like this with the significant moving parts, we typically see that 5-year vested rights, and we typically don't ask for that to be rescinded.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Driggs.
Thank you. We're all struggling with this one, and I agree with Mr. Bakari about the conceptual problem that we have, which is if we establish a precedent here that the plan we just adopted is not applicable, then where are we? And I'm sure nobody was listening, but last week I asked the planning director, what does the policy map mean? And we're now in the difficult situation where the policy map, admittedly, is just a sort of preliminary cut at creating place types, which is going to have a lot of defects because it was done on a wholesale basis. It's, there's a lot more work to be done. And yet that's our reference for area plans right now. And I think that's an imperfect situation to start with. So we look at something like this and we say, what is the technical resolution? What is the precedent? And then the other question is, do we have a kind of public interest position on it? Like, do we look at it and say, is this good or is it not good? And the staff did. The staff looked at this, saw a problem with the conformity, and then said, recommend it, because it appeared to the staff that in spite of these difficulties, this was something that ought to happen. And I get that. I think we should be willing to make a determination like that as well. But at the same time, we need to recognize that what we are inviting is a food fight over and over again, because we don't have an objective reference and we don't have a basis for telling whichever group is disappointed as a result of this decision, that's why we did this. We had to do this. We worked on that plan for a long time, and this is what we intend with our plan, and this is how that plan applies to this. And we cannot get into a mode, as we were able to before when we had 30-year-old area plans, of kind of case to case saying, yeah, okay, this time it should apply and that time not necessarily. So I'm struggling with this too, for the same reason Mr. Bakari is. I would love to have more clarity, not just the reasons that you enumerated in your recommendation, which all make sense to me, but a specific justification as to why this case is either unique and therefore qualifies for an exception to the policy, or this case invites a text amendment, like the policy is wrong. So either we fix the policy or we establish that uniqueness that would allow us to do this and not invite 20 more like it. And I'll be interested in the next month to see how we are able to progress along those lines. Again, I would hate to see a good petition fail because it got caught up in the middle of a conceptual discussion among us here. We've got to continue to do business, and I'm not taking a position about whether this is a good one that shouldn't fail, but I'm just saying it would be too bad if something that was good got caught in the crossfire in terms of how we are implementing our plan. So I hope we will continue to work on the issues that Mr. Bakari raised, and that we will find a way to do whatever the right thing is on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question, comments? Motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Let the room clear out for a little bit before we move on to agenda item number 39.
That's a tired group who's been working for a year on this. That was about as polite as I've ever seen that many people in here.
These guys, all green shirts or sellers. Yeah, of course they're for it. I mean, and that counts for something.
That's going to take
People that have to live.
That's why to me, they better hire some contractors. Get this done.
Not as many. They're here, but they don't turn out. They've done a lot of emails.
This is definitely going to change the fact that we're not living with the big time. Big time.
So this one is, oh, that's a big change.
Hey, how you doing?
Wow. We're getting right here, this petition. This is my Mallard Creek area that I'm talking about, this growth. Oh man, you got a lot going on, bro. Mine don't look nothing like that. This is like...
It feels like the room just got a little bit bigger.
Yeah, it did.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 39, rezoning petition 2022-053 by Raina Properties LLC, which is located on approximately 5.63 acres on the west side of Prosperity Church Road, northeast of Mallard Creek Road, and south of Prosperity Point Lane in Council District 4, Ms. Johnson's district. The current zoning is R3 single-family residential, and the proposed zoning is R17 MFCD multifamily residential conditional. Staff recommends approval of this petition. We do have opposition, so after staff's presentation, the petition will have 10 minutes.
All right, thank you. 2022-053, it's about 5.6 acres on Prosperity Church Road and Pinewood Lane. The existing zoning is R3, and the proposed zoning is for R17 multifamily conditional. And the adopted place type, you can see, is Neighborhood 1. We do have some commercial just across Prosperity Church and down on Drywood Court, as well as Neighborhood 2 across Prosperity Church Road from the site. The proposal, and just to provide a quick correction, notebooks, I believe the print version may say up to 95 single-family attached dwelling units. That was an error on our part. It's up to 50 single-family attached dwelling units in a total of 25 buildings. So 25 duplex buildings is what's being proposed. And that would, again, total out to 50 units. Building height would be capped at 40 feet. They are providing an 8-foot planting strip, an 8-foot sidewalk along Prosperity Church Road, and then an 8-foot sidewalk, or excuse me, 8-foot planting strip and 6-foot sidewalk along Pinewood Lane. Does dedicate rights-of-way 50 feet from center line of Prosperity Church Road to the City of Charlotte. Also provides an ADA-compliant cat's waiting pad along Prosperity Church Road. That would be, final location would be determined during permitting. And then some standard architectural requirements are built into the project, including things like building material, blank wall provisions, et cetera. Also providing a Class C buffer with a fence in that area along the site in green, and the access proposed is on Pinewood Lane, so no access proposed on Prosperity Church, just on Pinewood Lane there. Staff does recommend approval of the petition. There are no outstanding issues. The petition is inconsistent with Neighborhood 1 place type. While the building types of duplexes are found in Neighborhood 1, the overall design is a little bit different than what would be permitted in a true Neighborhood 1 duplex project. So with that, it translates to a little bit more of what we kind of determine now as planned multifamily. So that's why we do have an inconsistency, but overall, the building form itself with the types of units are found in Neighborhood 1 as well as Neighborhood 2. But while it is inconsistent, again, staff does support the petition and feel that it's an appropriate project in this location, and we'll be happy to take any questions following both petitioner presentation and presentation by members of the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Michael Barnes, former Mayor Pro Tem, City of Charlotte. You have 10 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, zoning committee, and staff. I am Michael Barnes. I am proud to represent Brandon Properties in this petition 2022-053 in District 4. It is a proposal to develop up to 50 townhomes, duplexes on the site. We have had 2 meetings with the community, one virtual, one in person, just last month, to discuss the site, and I'd be happy to walk you all through some of the specifics of the site. You will notice that as Mr. Pettin indicated, the means of ingress and egress are off of Pinewood Lane onto Prosperity Church Road. There was no traffic impact study required due to the low density nature of the site, and while I believe I'll address the concerns from the community once we hear them, I have a feeling I know what they may be. There are some issues regarding stormwater, which will be dealt with in the field if the petition is approved, and the infrastructure improvements that Mr. Pettin mentioned regarding the area along Prosperity Church Road will be made. The dedication of an 8-foot planting strip sidewalk area, all of that will be provided for. So I'll be happy to take questions or whatever your process is at this point.
Thank you very much. I have 3 speakers in opposition, Debbie Varn, Alan McDonald, and Eugene Brand. You have 10 minutes combined.
Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members, and Zoning Committee members and staff. I'm Alan McDonald. I'm president of the Prosperity Point HOA, which is adjacent to the property site that's in view for approval. We have 2 specific concerns, and then we have a broader issue that I'd like to discuss with you. I think that impacts us indirectly. As Mr. Barnes has said, and let me preface this by thanking Mr. Barnes with community meetings and helping us to address our issues, for I think from the most part he's been most helpful in doing. Back to the concerns. We are concerned with the insufficient environmental analysis of the runoff to the backyards in our residents, and now will continue, I think, under the property and off Pinewood Road. The Charlotte Water Services last reviewed this site on September 16, 22. Obviously, the changes to the site to enlarge it occurred in December 22, and there has not been any other analysis to revisit the concerns. The Water Services review had no runoff recommendations, nor did the impact analysis recommendation as was provided by staff in addressing approval of the site. The recommendation was to have the petitioner address runoff issues with residents' properties after development. To us, this is unacceptable. We would like to have more analysis performed to know exactly what the consequences will be. And as history has shown, we've had other water-related issues with the feeder creek this water volume is going into, and also with specific residences having water flooding issues in their backyards. And some of these requests to the city have occurred over 10 to 20 years without any resolution. So that's why we feel very uncomfortable that having to defer to the developer to take care of any run water issues is most troubling to us. The petitioner also plans to address privacy issues, which we still have somewhat of a concern, and we've been working with the petitioner to do so. And I feel like they will make efforts to try to dissipate the concerns. They have 40-foot tall units that will overlook the backyards to Prosperity Point residents, and I'm hoping that we can come to some kind of resolution there as an addition to every other progress that we have made so far to date. Other related concerns, I believe it was mentioned that this neighborhood place type was going to change to a type 2, which we're in disagreement because it's surrounded by residential properties on all sides. There may be a development across from Pinewood, and which may incur additional retail, but it's predominantly our three neighborhoods in which this site is surrounded by. The rezoning transportation analysis indicated that there's no traffic input study which is required, which is probably typical for a single site plan analysis. However, there are numerous projects currently being developed and those in the pipeline for rezoning in contiguous areas in our and near areas which need to be addressed. The city should consider taking a broader view of area traffic impacts to us and other communities and add this to the transportation analysis. And I'll go on to further give you an example of that as we discuss. The plan, of course, two of the focuses are neighborhood diversity and inclusion, safety, and healthy mobility. A broader view would also show that there needs to be more analysis done of the whole area. For example, the site is 0.7 miles from the intersection of Mallard Creek Church, and Prosperity Roads. In this short distance, there are 7 vehicle access points, including illegal turns that are occurring to Drywood Court and causing near accidents to occur, and this is on a daily basis. The traffic flow is exacerbated by more vehicles converging to this area and by the additional development of a larger development at the end of Prosperity Church. And also, if Tradition develops another 132-unit apartment complex off Tradition, it adds to 4 more access points at White Cascade. As you can see in this small area in which our neighborhoods live, it's going to create much more congestion, and it's going to create more risk, I think, to the communities. I applaud the plan goals and would hope the city would address other impacts to the communities, in addition to try to balance the growth and meeting the demands of people moving into our city. However, I think in looking at the EDO, and I'm not an expert in all the information in it, it seems to me the aesthetic values and the character of our communities are being not given as much attention as I think they should be. For example, the EDO has 3 of 10 goals in which they address the tree canopy situation, the arbor vaping was performed, and there was a large swath of large mature trees taken down. And I don't know how you can mitigate something like that, but it seems to me that there has to be ongoing oversight and review when these large particular developments are occurring.
Just let you know you got 4 minutes combined.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'll just let you know you got 4 minutes combined for the other speakers.
Okay, I'm good there, thank you. And this does not, also there's other aspects of the aesthetics to our community. You've got a large 12-foot wide sidewalk that's going from Mallard Creek down Mallard Creek Church, in which there is no pedestrians that would use this particular sidewalk. There's additional trees being taken down for this large sidewalk. So I would ask you to consider the aesthetics values, my concerns for a broader scope and reviewing traffic in light of all the projects going around in our area, and I'm sure other parts of Charlotte. And I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. My name is Eugene Brand, and I live due west of I'm the adjoining property. And when I talked to Mr. Barnes about, they're putting the retention pond next to my property. I have a well, I have 1.48 acres. Everybody in our neighborhood, 23 of us, have 1, 4 or more acreage. And it seems that putting 50 townhomes next to all of us, it's not real good. We have children in our neighborhood, and the average age is probably over 55, but we have families, we have school buses, we have a lot of worries about that one exit where all those people coming out of that development is on Pinewood Lane. Why couldn't they exit on Prosperity? But they're going to dump it on Pinewood, and it's a single-family homes. We like our neighborhood. And the traffic is going to be horrendous because there's already 25, 30 cars every day leaving our neighborhood. And now we're going to have another 100 at the intersection where you have to leave the neighborhood. I mean, the driveway is going to be, what, 85 to 100 feet from Prosperity Church Road, and I'm not real happy. I work every day, and it's just not going to be real comfortable to me or my family. I know that these people need to, develop stuff, but putting 40-foot buildings next to my property, I have 280 foot of property line adjacent to them, and I get to watch them build those buildings and watch them look out their windows at my house and me in my backyard and our family. No, I don't really want that, but the council will decide. I can't. I'm just a normal citizen, and whatever comes, comes. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brand. Mr. Barnes, you have 2 minutes for a rebuttal.
Thank you again, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. With respect to the stormwater runoff issue, we have done some analysis on the pre and post side of construction, and the BMP that was on that site plan that I had up here earlier is rated to contain the water from the impervious area on the site, and it will flow into stormwater infrastructure to the west of that star on your current screen. Also, we checked on the distances between our project and the neighboring properties, and our project is about 100 feet from the neighboring property. So we're sensitive to the concerns about the 40-foot buildings and people being able to see into the homes to the rear, but I think because of the distance it might, and by the way, the trees, it might be difficult for that to occur. But we continue to try to find ways to address the concerns. We hear some of them are very difficult to address, but we're making every effort we can, and what you've heard from me and what you've seen here on the screen and in the materials is a strong effort on our part to address those concerns. So I'd be happy to take any questions, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. It's an honor to see you, my predecessor. And I've spoken to you about this development numerous times. I also want to thank the residents, Mr. McDonald, Ms. Barn and Mr. Brand for coming out. So thank you. I want to pass this information down to my colleagues. And if you've watched the zoning meetings, you know my concern about this Mallard Creek area. I understand that your petition only has 53 units, but the broader concern from the residents is the impact that the development leaves on them. The developers develop their single independent development. Meanwhile, there are, I think it's 21, 22 pending developments in this Mallard Creek area. I also have given my colleagues the list of active petitions that are pending. And of the 20, I think it's 21 pending petitions, no, it's 15 on this. Only 3 of them required a traffic study. So while the traffic, it may not have met the benchmark for a traffic study, our residents feel this pain, along with Mallard Creek Elementary. And, you know, I'm sorry that I asked the developers themselves to deal with our lack of policy or our processes, but it is what it is. The residents, they're feeling this. Even, and I talked about in the January meeting, the impact on schools. We have the school numbers, the impact hasn't changed since 2022. If you look through the petition, the numbers are about the same. So we have to take a realistic view at the growth in our city and the infrastructure and the impact of growth. I hope that the developers really work with the city and with the residents in making the improvements, because Mallard Creek is a state-owned road, so there's no improvements proposed for years. So these are the challenges, and I know that you appreciate that, having been the District 4 representative. I think we've talked about the growth in the city and so in the district. So I just want to bring that to my colleagues' attention. Here's an example of what what our residents are facing. This is one area. I met with some Mallard Creek residents, and I want to thank a couple of the planning members that were on the call. It was Will Russell and Kiba Samuel. So I'm really engaged and paying attention to the growth in this area. I want to maintain the quality of life in District 4. I want District 4 to be a better area when I leave than when I came. So I just ask city staff, you know, I'm asking for help. You know, our residents are feeling the pain of all of this growth. And again, out of 15 of these petitions, only 5 required traffic impact study because of our policy colleagues. So, yeah, I'm not sure, honestly, where I am on this petition, and this is, like Councilmember Driggs said, this could be a good petition, but it's the impact of the growth in the city. And you talk about, you know, I know we look at land use, but we also have to be the voice for our residents here on the dais. So I just wanted to share that concern, make sure my colleagues see this. If I were you, I'd be asking for this. We should be looking at this kind of impact, all around the city. You know, I advocated for an infrastructure meeting, and we had that. So I just really, the developers, we really have to be asking the questions. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bakari?
Thanks. I want to bring it up to a more macro level real quick. It dawned on me when you look roughly at the last rezoning petition, the hearing, this one, and then the next 8 that you read in there. I just did a quick glimpse, and this is pretty wild, but I think it emphasizes a point, and this is directionally correct. I did it on the fly here. Of the 10, roughly speaking, 7 or 70% of what we are hearing tonight has a theme of staff recommends the approval, and it's inconsistent with the policy map we just made. So to me, that sends a theme of doing things against or opposed to what the policy map says is not, it's not the exception, it's the rule right now. And maybe some of that is
in relation to how staff needs to start writing these proposals. Maybe they need to come out and start saying staff recommends opposition of the petition because it's inconsistent with the plan, but we think it's a good deal for this, that you politically might want to consider breaking the plan. Either that is scenario one, or the other scenario is the plan needs to change. And I don't know which one it is, but you can't look at 70% of the things we're hearing on a 2040 policy map that the ink isn't even dry on yet. This is now not consistent with. And if you look at also the broader point, that of that 70%, the vast majority, it's inconsistent with neighborhood 1, N1, which is the lowest density. And oh, by the way, we just took away the ability for single-family zoning to be protected in there. So people can build triplex up to quadplex. So we've already been aggressive on what you're allowed to do in there, and now we're coming and saying, so I'm not saying that's wrong. All I'm saying is, I feel like staff is weighing in on a judgment call, a deal-making call, when they say it's inconsistent with the thing we just made, but we support it and we recommend it. I think that's the number one thing we've got to solve for. If you really believe that we need to do something against the new thing we've just done, we need to justify it, and we need to consider, do we need to change the broader policy? Because we've got 2 years of this coming up, and the decisions for where people are rezoning are going to be the least of our issue. It's going to be all of these that are going to be rezoned periodically to come to alignment.
Just to clarify for those that are watching, the current policy map that we have is the status quo. And we have definitely clearly said that those policy maps should change, and that we had just started the process last week of the community area planning process, which will result over the next 2 years of, in some situations, a far different policy map, which will guide the type of development strategies in a far different way than the status quo that we have mapped. So just want to be clear for that, for the audience that is watching. Staff has, in fact, and City Council has, in fact, affirmed what Mr. Bakari just mentioned. Mr. Driggs.
So I wanted to say to, I guess, Mr. McDonald, for one, traffic impact, take a broader view, absolutely agree. 10 years ago, I came on council, and we had the same problem on Providence Road, where these things were being approved piecemeal, and nobody was looking north and south to see how much land there was and what else was in the pipeline. And we could end up backing ourselves into a corner where we can't do anything anymore because we overcommitted early and created a gridlock situation. On stormwater, I will tell you these developments are subject to a detailed engineering review and a post-construction control ordinance. So it has happened that the stormwater situation improved for people nearby as a result. The reason you probably weren't able to get any action from the city before is because we had a huge backlog of service requests and complaints about stormwater, and our capacity to make the service calls and rectify those situations was limited. So I just want to hold out to you without judgment about this rezoning that you might find, as far as stormwater is concerned, you end up better off. On the general issue, one problem I always had with this approach that we took was you cannot legislate every single situation. So we could start patching this thing up with text amendments or who knows what, but the idea that you could do a wholesale policy map and write wholesale rules for 260,000 parcels and not continue to run into the special circumstances of each case. So that means what is our next move? Like, do we continue to recognize that each one of these, for some reason or another, doesn't conform to the policy map and just then start winging it case to case? I think that's a very bad message for people who are thinking about investing here and helping us to create the housing we need, because we're saying, you know, go for it. You may get lucky and maybe you won't. And it's just got to be a better, a more structured environment than that. But on the other hand, we are not going to patch this thing up with any short-term improvements that get away from the uniqueness of these petitions, the special circumstances, the surroundings, the traffic, and all of that. So we have to resolve that knowing that a lot of the rezoning that we do, that we must approve, is going to be uncomfortable for people nearby. So we're in an environment where, generally speaking, these petitions get a bad reaction because people don't like change. They already live in a crowded environment. So now we're in the midst of that, and we have to try and do the right thing, continue to pursue our housing goal and our overall development goals, and justify to the people who are disappointed why we did what we did. So I think Mr. Bakari has performed an important service by highlighting this issue. We need to do some work. We can't go on having 6 or 7 of our petitions each month recommended for approval, even though they're inconsistent with a plan that we just adopted. I just think that's a terrible look. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Watlington?
Yep, more of the same in regards to just the idea that we've adopted a policy map that we cannot execute against. I think that indicates a lack of sequencing in terms of approving policy without having a fully baked plan. I hope to see these community area plans come together as fast as possible. I will also say that we need to be real clear about what the goals are. And I wouldn't necessarily say that the goals are always to develop. I think it is okay to make a decision as a community that some things we want and some things we do not. I happen to agree with you, Mr. Driggs, that I think it's ludicrous to think that we're going to have a standard that works for over 200,000 parcels. That is why we have a rezoning process. And I'm okay with that. I think that if we're going to do that, we've got to be very honest and we've got to be consistent in terms of our policy and what our community actually wants. Because what I see here is policy that is adopted, contentious as it may be, and then decisions that are made to continue to recommend and then approve things that are outside of the very policy that we decided in the name of more development, while we continue to talk about the negative impact to our current constituents. That to me is inexcusable and unjustifiable. I don't understand why we continue to do that. At some point, somebody's going to have to say the buck stops here, and I'm going to stand on my decisions, and I'm deciding for you that this is better for you, despite all of the reasons why we keep saying every month that it is not. This council member is not prepared to do that. I am prepared to stand 10 toes down on saying no where I believe that we are overdeveloping. And until that is reflected in our policy, I think we're going to continue to have this. I have not seen that anywhere where we've drawn a line in the sand to say this is where it stops. Because to Mr. Bakari's point, even in areas where we have said we're going to move very aggressively, even in our N1, and now we're going to go upzone every single one of those parcels as well. I just feel like that is disingenuous or disingenuous of the policy that we put together and of the desire of this community.
Mr. Driggs?
I just want to note, we find ourselves once again making zoning policy in a zoning meeting. It's not how it's supposed to work. I did have a quick question for the petitioner. You're requesting R17. It looks like your density is about 9. Is that right?
Yes. I'm trying to do the math quickly. So initially, this parcel in this proposal had a couple of different lives, Mr. Drigg. Initially, it started with that northern site, and the petitioner was able to acquire the southern site. The parcels are occupied by 2 ranch homes, so it's 2 houses and accessory buildings on 5 acres. And so once the site was combined, we stuck with the RMF 17 under the old code, of course, the old ordinance. And the number that you reference is what plays out ultimately, but the intent is to only do 50. If I might explain a couple of other issues that I hear outside of this building among developers, there's a lot of confusion about blending the existing ordinance with the 2040 plan with the UDO. There's a lot of confusion. And people are trying to address the council's goals of diverse housing and types and qualities, but at the same time respect the 2040 plan. And if they were under the old ordinance, which we were in this petition because it's from 2022, figure out how to appeal to the issues that staff needs addressed, that you guys need addressed. And it's a really it's a challenging world. As I've heard it from you guys, and I see it out there too.
You can tell it's challenging for us as well. So the R-17 is not in order to allow setbacks and other things that wouldn't be allowed in an R-12?
So the setbacks, no, it was not done for that purpose, no. It was initially a count issue, but now because the site is spread out, the density dropped. So it does turn into 9 as opposed to what would have originally been closer to 17.
So I'll just note, in this day and age, that's pretty low density. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
it is.
Thanks.
Mr. Bakari?
Just one final point, because again, at a macro level, but it applies here, because I really want to make sure we have a firm takeaway, and staff hears this. I agree with the points also of the over 200,000 parcels, we're never going to have it, but here we are, right here, right? And yet we're faced with these things, so what do we do? The ultimate question is whether it's this or the alignment and community area planning process or whatever, who decides? Who is the ultimate decision maker, and how is that going to happen? We know it's us, but we're not planning experts. So I think one thing I'd recommend us exploring in this case, and the others we've seen tonight and we'll see, is we should have our staff experts giving us their expert opinion, whether it's what the community or we or whoever wants to hear, regardless to us as we're making policy. And as we make policy, staff should only recommend and give their opinion on if they're going to support or oppose it, if it's consistent and inconsistent with the last policy we've designed. And whether that's the final one that's done or it's a step along the way, they can give us their formal opinion later. But for them to come out and make a decision that's not aligned with the last policy that we did, in some cases putting us on our heels with the community, having to overrule them with something that we didn't pass yet, I think puts us in a very bad position. So I think that, Dave, if I can, might be a bit of the blueprint by which we take staff out of the contentious portions of this, knowing this is how you're going to call balls and strikes going forward. You can still relay your expert points, and then we can figure out what we're going to do in the interim period.
Before I recognize Ms. Johnson, I just want to remind us that we're making land use decisions and conversations about the petitions that are in front of us. It does seem clear that council may want to have a policy discussion. So staff, maybe that's a take back of another meeting that we could have at some point in time to figure out how to go about our zoning decisions and hearings moving forward.
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, and I'm honored to have something other than a land use conversation, because I believe that philosophy is what got us into displacement and the overcrowded and everything. So I think it's up to us as leaders in the city to have conversations about the impact of the development. I also want to say that I want to address the stormwater issue. I've gone out to several neighbors or residents' homes in District 4 because of the flooding or the drainage or problems in their backyard where they were responsible for paying the $20,000, the $30,000 worth of improvements because of the drainage or the stormwater. So I wanted to ask Dave or someone from the stormwater department. I know I've had a couple folks from water meet me out at the properties. And can you tell me, Dave, the impact or how this development is impacting these residents? Some of the previous examples where I've gone out, what's happening with their pipes in these neighborhoods? And I'll just talk about District 4, maybe it's the age of the development or something, where there's drainage issues after new development. What is causing that from a technical perspective?
So I'm going to have to get you some information on a follow-up from our stormwater folks. That's not something I can really get into. I'm by no means an expert on any of that infrastructure. So be happy to put you in contact with folks that can answer that, and we'll pose that as a follow-up question to them and make sure they're aware and get you the information.
Well, thank you. I'll just affirm what Mr. McDonald was saying about the flooding in the backyards. I've gone out to numerous developments because of that. So, thank you.
Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Raise your hand. Any opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 40. rezoning petition 2022-062 by Jeff Constantino for approximately .38 acres on the east side of Nations Ford Road, north of Tyvola Road, and west of I-77 in Council District 3, Miss Watlington's district. The current zoning is R17 multifamily residential, and the proposed zoning is neighborhood services. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of an outstanding issue related to site and building design. This item does not have any community opposition, so after staff's presentation, petitioner will have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. 2022-062, it's .38 acres on Nations Ford Road, just north of the intersection with Tyvola. It is currently zoned R17 MF, and the proposed zoning is for NS Neighborhood Services. Adopted place type, you can see, follows pretty closely with zoning for the most part. We've got commercial just to the south, campus north, neighborhood one across. Of course, this parcel, as mentioned, is zoned R17, as well as the parcels behind it. And again, this would be proposed for a neighborhood services zoning district. So the proposal itself is for up to 12 electric vehicle charging stalls and one accessory structure that could be up to 1,000 square feet. That would include restrooms and potentially vending machines. Electric charging stalls would be covered by a canopy that would have solar panels on it. That height would be 40 feet. Does commit to dedicate right-of-way from the center line to Nations Ford Road. Also, it would propose an 8-foot planting strip and 6-foot sidewalk along the site's frontage on Nations Ford. Does commit to building materials of brick, natural stone, or wood for the small building that is proposed on site. Also commits to screening the electrical equipment pad from adjoining properties in the public street, and also limits freestanding lighting fixtures to 21 feet and requires that they be fully capped, shielded, and downwardly directed. Staff is recommending approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issue related to site and building design. Petition is inconsistent with Neighborhood 1. It's, again, just for this EV charging station. We wouldn't get any additional uses based on the permitted uses in the conditional notes. So it says the site can only be devoted to that type of use. So if any other use was proposed, that would need to go back through rezoning process. And with that, we will turn it over to the petitioner's team for their presentation. We'll take any questions you may have following their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, and Zoning. My name is Jeff Constantino. I represent Coulomb Fast EV Charging. Excited to bring you a topic here that can improve the infrastructure of Charlotte. We are a homegrown Charlotte-based company. We plan to go region-wide, but for now we're going to start in our hometown here in Charlotte, bringing, as was discussed, a destination EV charging station off of I-77. We will bring 3 chargers, which can service up to 12 cars simultaneously right off of I-77 within 0.2 miles. Should service the growing need for electric vehicles, particularly in that higher commuter thoroughfare going north-south through the city of Charlotte. As was mentioned, we will have a 50-kilowatt solar canopy on top, which will feed the chargers underneath. It won't support all of the charging needs. However, it will offset a good portion of the charging needs with renewable energy. We will also be purchasing renewable energy credits to offset anything else sourced from the grid directly. We are excited about this. We hope it's the first of several charging stations that we will bring to the Charlotte area. This is really the only one that's required zoning variance to date. But yeah, with that, I will pause for questions.
Thank you. I have a question. Mr. Pettin, you said this would be the only allowed usage for this site. Is currently under our zoning regulations, is this the way that a EV charging station would have to go? Or are there other allowed, are there other zoning districts where this could be allowed?
There are other districts where it could be allowed conventionally, like probably a B2. It's akin to an automobile service station. It's just, it's not serving gasoline sales. It's just serving electric charging outlets or infrastructure. So it could be done in other zoning districts. The conditional district was used just to limit it to this. And keep in mind also any service stations, even under the UDO, that for gas stations have to go through a conditional zoning process as well. So, but yeah, this could be done in some other districts. We went with this conditional just to kind of lock it in for that and protect it from, or prohibit it from some other uses that may not be as suitable in that location.
Thank you. Mr. Constantino, just for my edification, does the proximity to the hotels make this a kind of desirable place to put this, or is that totally unrelated?
It's a good question. Hotel use case would probably be more consistent with a level 2 charging, which is more of an 8-hour charge overnight situation. That, of course, wouldn't draw the traffic from I-77 and service the commuter folks. Ours is a 15-minute experience. So these are the largest chargers we can obtain on the market today. It should be really great for commuters who need to get in and out, similar to a gas station experience and not that 8-hour experience you would experience in a hotel.
Thank you very much. You have further questions?
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Seeing none, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 41, rezoning petition 2022-078 by Siri Ventures LLC, located on approximately 7.41 acres on the northeast side of West Trade Street, west of Brookshire Freeway, and east of Roswell's Ferry Road in Council District 2, Mr. Graham's district. The current zoning is I2 General Industrial, and the proposed zoning is mixed-use development conditional and UR2 urban residential conditional. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to environment and site and building design. This petition does not have any opposition, so after staff, Mr. McVeigh, you have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. 2022-078, it's just about 7.5 acres on West Trade Street near the intersection with Wells Meadow Drive. It is currently zoned I2, and the proposed zoning is for UR2 conditional and MUD conditional. The adopted place type is for innovation mixed use, and the proposal is for 2 development areas, A and B. Development Area A would be zoned UR2 conditional. That would include up to 116 single-family attached residential dwelling units. Development Area B is proposed to be zoned MUD conditional. That would be developed with up to 12,000 square feet of gross floor area for general offices, medical offices, clinics, child care center, community rec center, indoor recreation, EDE types 1 and 2, brewery, financial institution without a drive-through window, showroom, retail, personal service, studios, et cetera. And type 2 EDEs that only serve alcoholic beverages would be prohibited. It does commit to preserving the existing building in Development Area B while allowing for some renovation for some of those uses that we just mentioned. Would limit building height in both development areas to 52 feet. Provides a 20-foot setback from future back of curb on West Trade Street, a 20-foot landscape yard along the northern property boundary. Also would commit to implement an 8-foot planting strip and 8-foot sidewalk along West Trade Street. Would provide a 50-foot greenway easement along Stewart Creek to Mecklenburg County for future greenway development. That's there shown on the right-hand side of the plan in green. Also would orient front doors of the units along West Trade Street to face the public street, and then front doors of all other units to open space or internal courtyard, tree save area, or Stewart Creek. And would also commit to providing a minimum of 2,000 square feet of open space and at least 3 of the following elements: walking paths, landscaping, seating areas, and then structures appropriate within the proposed open space area. Staff does recommend approval. We do have some outstanding issues related to environment and site and building design. It is consistent with the innovation mixed-use place type, which does allow for adaptive reuse and residential development, which this project contains both. We'll be happy to take any questions following the petitioner's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McVeigh. And Kyle DiPretoro, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council, members of the Zoning Committee. Keith McVeigh with Moore Van Allen, assisting Seer Ventures with this rezoning petition. As you mentioned, as you introduced, Kyle DiPretoro here representing the petitioner. I want to thank Dave for his assistance with the request. We will be working with Dave to address the remaining outstanding issues before the Zoning Committee meeting on the 7th. We have, as Dave mentioned, the site is currently developed with the Franz Kids Boys and Girls Center, which will be preserved and adaptive reused with both non-residential and residential uses. That's in Development Area B, and the Development Area A would be redeveloped with up to 116 townhomes. We have been working closely with the Biddleville Smallville Neighborhood Association as well as the 5 Points Community Collaborative, and they've sent us a letter in support of the petition. They see these additional townhomes as this site as an asset to the historic West End corridor area and are in support of the request. petition has worked hard to preserve the existing Friends and Kids Boys and Girls Center. Can't say that quickly. We are working with the County Parks and Rec on Greenway dedications, as Dave mentioned. We are consistent with the place type map of innovative mixed-use district. Here's our proposed plan. Again, preservation of the Friends, the Boys and Girls Center, the redevelopment of the remainder of the site with up to 116 townhomes, which would front on West Trade or interior open spaces. Each unit would have a garage, which would be served from the interior alleys or roads. And then the units, as I mentioned, would either front on Trade, the Greenway, interior open space, or and these other interior spaces here. We'd be glad to answer any questions.
Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. McVeigh, I was looking at the involvement and feedback from the community.
Yes, ma'am.
And for a project of this size, where you're adding up to 116 townhomes and doubling the number of trips on a daily basis, you didn't have a lot of engagement with the community. And I want to make sure that the community had the opportunity to voice their perspective.
Yes, ma'am. As I mentioned, early on, we started conversations with Historic West End, the Smallville, Biddleville facility community, as well as the Five Points Collaborative. We had several meetings with them prior to our community meeting. So by the time the community meeting came along, everybody was aware of what was being requested, and folks chose not to attend. But we did engage with the community early on, and as their letter of support shows, they are supportive of the change here from industrial to UR2 and MUD optional to allow the adaptive reuse and additional units. So we did engage with them, and they are aware of the request.
Thank you.
Mr. Graham?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that. There was a lot of pre-work done. I noticed the one person attended the meeting, the write-up as well. But certainly both major stakeholder organizations were very much engaged and provided input, and certainly I had conversations in reference to the project from previously as well. So I think we're good to go from my perspective.
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand.
Thank you, Mayor.
Opposed? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 42, rezoning petition 2022-086 by PDAN Holdings LLC on approximately 2.46 acres on the north side of Johnston Ola Road and on the south side of I-485 west of Mallet Creek Road in Council District 4, Ms. Johnson's district. The current zoning is R3 single-family residential, and the proposed zoning is R8MF multifamily residential conditional. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to environment and site and building design. This petition has no opposition, so after staff's presentation, Nick Tosco will have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. 2022-086, it's just under 2.5 acres at Johnston-Ayler at the intersection with Johnston-Ayler Private Drive and just adjacent to Interstate I-485. Current zoning is R3. Proposed zoning is for R8 multifamily conditional. You can see some R4 and UR2 projects on the south side of Johnston-Ayler as well. Adopted place type is for Neighborhood 1. You can see we also have Neighborhood 2, as well as campus and parks and preserve in the immediate area. The proposal is for up to 19 residential units in a mix of quadruplexes and one duplex building. There would be no more than 5 units per building, limits building height to 40 feet. There is an existing barn. You can see that at the back, kind of right-hand corner of the property in that orange color. That would propose to remain. Would also propose a 20-foot wide internal drive connecting to Johnston-Ayler Road. That would connect to an existing driveway access then to the east. Does identify existing 6-foot sidewalk and existing 8-foot planting strip along Johnston-Ayler Road already in place, as well as an existing bike lane, an existing turn lane as well, both along Johnston-Ayler Road. Does include architectural standards related to usable porches and stoops and blank wall expanses, as well as minimizing visual impact of garage doors. Does illustrate an 18-foot Class C buffer along property lines abutting those parcels zoned R4. You can see that on the left side of the plan as well as the right. We also have tree save area up there in that top left corner of the site as well. Also proposes a minimum 10-foot buffer along 485, although it would be larger than that just given the lack of proposed development after that private drive to the north heading towards 485. Again, staff does recommend approval of this petition just upon resolution of outstanding issues related to environment and site and building design. Again, does propose quadplexes and a duplex, which would come into about 8 dwelling units per acre. So building form to some degree is consistent with some things you might see in a neighborhood one place type, but again, the site design is where we have a little bit of a net inconsistency, so it is more consistent with the neighborhood 2 type of project, but overall staff feels that it's an appropriate location for it, given the context and given the existence of neighborhood 2 projects on the south side of Johnson Naylor and the proximity there on Highway 485. So with that, we'll take any questions following the petitioner's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tosco. You have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening, members of the council, members of the zoning committee. It's good to be before you. My name is Nick Tosco with the law firm Pointer Spruill, and I'm here on behalf of the petitioner, PDAN Holdings, which is run by Dan McCahan. He is here and is the owner and developer of the site, and David Daniels with Cole Janess Stone, who is the site designer for the site as well. He is here. Dan is an independent builder in this community with over 30 years of experience. I'm sad that Councilmember Johnson's not here because she is supportive of Dan's work. He has built in this community. He does small, affordable, single-family and multifamily homes for sale and rent. And in fact, 3 years ago, you all approved a rezoning just down the road in a very similar development on Johnson Naylor Road, and where he allows for more affordable types of housing in this area that, as we've heard, needs that kind of housing. And so most importantly, he lives in this area, and his family, in fact, his in-laws are right across the street. So you know that he's building good product. And we've worked closely with staff. There's no major concerns. Nobody has shown up to oppose this. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but the outstanding issues seem to have all been addressed, and we're just thankful for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the council?
Move to close. Second.
This motion has been properly second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 44, rezoning petition 2022-106 by Drakeford Communities, located on approximately half an acre on the southeast intersection of Renner Street and Fairmont Street, east of Beatty'sford Road and north of Oak Lawn Avenue in Council District 1, Ms. Anderson's district. The current zoning is R5 single-family residential, and the proposed zoning is UR2 urban residential conditional. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to transportation and requested technical revisions based on site design. Again, there is no opposition, so after staff's presentation, the petitioner will have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. 2022-106, half an acre on Fairmont and Renner Street. Existing zoning is R5, and the proposed zoning is UR2 conditional. The adopted place type is neighborhood 1. You can see we have a neighborhood center proposed on the other side of Fairmont and Renner Street, just across from this petition. The proposal is proposing up to 6 single-family attached dwelling units or 4 single-family dwelling units detached. So they'd either be 3 duplex buildings totaling 6 or 4 single-family detached dwelling. It just depends on the types of development outcomes that the site would have once, if it gets entitled. The petitioner could certainly kind of clarify which direction they may go in on some of that, but just wanted to clarify, again, up to 6 units, 3 duplexes with two units each, or 4 single-family detached. Does provide an 8-foot planting strip and 8-foot sidewalk along both frontages on Renner and Fairmont, and would dedicate unnecessarily right-of-way in fee simple conveyance to the city of Charlotte, and also provides architectural standards to include building materials for the project. Staff does recommend approval of the petition. We do have outstanding issues with transportation and technical revisions for site design that need to be resolved. It is consistent with the 2040 policy map recommendation for Neighborhood 1, and we'll be happy to take any questions following the petitioner's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa Carey, Bobby Drake for the Matt Langston. You have 3 minutes combined.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, and staff. Matt Langston and I would just like to thank the staff for presenting our proposal. We think they've addressed all things we want to have considered. We have had community correspondence. We had a community meeting, and 3 of the surrounding property owners called. We initially considered a more dense project, 10 townhomes, and that was not opposed, but we felt this was more scale. So that is our presentation, and we're open to answering your questions. And we've also met with Councilmember Anderson and spoke to her several months ago about the project. Thank you.
Questions or comments from council? Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Director, thank you for your engagement on this project and also connecting with the community for their input as well. I'm glad that they were able to voice their perspective as it relates to the density, and everyone was able to be accommodated. So thank you for your partnership.
Thank you.
Close.
Second.
Motion to close, properly second.
No, I'm anticipating you.
He's getting ready to vote.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposition? Seeing none, we shall move on to item number 45, rezoning petition 2022-117 by Mungo Homes on approximately 9.16 acres on the northeast side of Old Plank Road, east of Brookshire Boulevard, and west of Harlan Street in Council District 2, Mr. Graham's district. The current zoning is R3, single-family residential, and the proposed zoning is R8 MF, multifamily residential conditional with 5-year vested rights. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to transportation and requested technical revisions. This petition does have opposition, so after staff's presentation, the petitioner will have 10 minutes.
All right, thank you. 2022-117, it's just over 9 acres on Old Plank Road, just east of Brookshire Boulevard and west of Harlan Street. Current zoning is R3, does have the Lake Wiley Protected Area Overlay. Proposed zoning is for R8, multifamily conditional, also would have the Lake Wiley Protected Area as an overlay as well. The policy map does recommend Neighborhood 1. You can see we do have Neighborhood Center just on the other side of Old Plank Road, as well as on the west side there of Brookshire Boulevard, just about off the slide. The proposal is for up to 54 townhome units and no more than 14 principal structures. No more than 4 buildings would have more than 5 units per building. Does commit to minimum 400 square feet of private open space per sublot. Common open space might also be provided. Access to the site would be through Old Plank Road as well as a connection to Sidell Lane. Would commit to installing a 5-foot bike lane along Old Plank Road. Also construction of an 8-foot planting strip and 6-foot sidewalk along all public streets. Would commit to provide a 2-car garage for every unit, as well as a 50-foot Class C buffer that may be reduced to 25%. That would result in a 37.5-foot wide buffer with a fence around the entirety of the rezoning boundary, aside from the frontage along Old Plank Road. So again, everywhere you see that bold green around the site, that would be that 37.5-foot buffer with a fence. Lighting fixtures would be fully capped and shielded with a maximum height of freestanding fixtures to be at 21 feet and provide standard architectural details committing things like primary building materials, screen meter banks, enclosed dumpster and recycling area, pitched roofs, garage door treatments, and covered front porches and stoops. Staff is recommending approval of this petition. Do have some outstanding issues to resolve related to transportation and requested technical revisions. Petition is inconsistent with the 2040 policy map recommendation, and we'll be happy to take any questions following presentations by the petitioner and members of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Grant, Matt Kearns, and Eddie Moore, you have 10 minutes combined.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, members of the zoning committee. Bridget Grant with Moore and Van Allen. Pleased to be here tonight with Matt Kearns with Mungo Homes and Eddie Moore with McAdams Group working on this rezoning. As Dave mentioned, it's just over a 9-acre site located on Old Plank Road, and the existing zoning is R3. We're seeking an R8 CD, which means we're going to be looking for some specific conditions that are context sensitive to the specific design. Dave also mentioned that the place type is N1, which does support the development of duplexes, triplexes, and townhomes in this level of place type. That said, we are putting some conditions on it to help it better align with the place type goals. One of the things that I wanted to point out on our proposed plan is that while we're seeking 54 lots, the existing zoning would allow 27 single-family homes, and if someone were to wait to develop under the new place type or the new zoning that'll translate in June of this year, you'd probably be able to get 48 lots on this. And so we are doing a moderate amount of increased lots, but we're hoping that the conditions that we're proposing help remedy that difference. Overall, as Dave mentioned, we're proposing to include the required street connection from Seidel into the site. That would happen whether or not it was rezoned. We've got limitations on the number of buildings that will be in each grouping of townhomes. We did agree as a result of our community meeting to put a fence all the way around the site. The developer has also gone out and met on site with some of the adjacent neighbors. They've got some existing stormwater issues, and so we're looking for ways this rezoning and development can address some existing issues. You can see there's tree save in the periphery of the site where we're looking to preserve existing tree canopy. We've got a 50-foot Class C buffer, and I think Dave mentioned the other transportation improvements. We've got architectural commitments included in the rezoning. In lieu of the 12-foot multi-use path, we've got the 6-foot sidewalk and then the 5-foot bike lane. We did use that community input to get the fencing, and we're going to continue to work with the neighbors on the existing stormwater issues. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Michael Reed.
Good.
Speakers?
Is that?
I finished.
You're done? All right. Thank you. Michael Reed, Donald Obst, Greg Curry, and Sarah Wells. You have 10 minutes combined.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Wells. Might be too loud. I live on the corner of Plumcrest and Old Plank. I think if you, can somebody flip that back one? We're concerned for a lot of reasons. I think in one of the pictures that you were just shown about the neighborhoods across Old Plank Road, that whole area, as far as you can see in either direction from our houses on Old Plank, is already being developed. There's construction going on. They've cut down all the trees. They're doing R8 housing over there. The two neighborhoods that border this proposed development, one's R3, one's R4, and this is kind of smack in the middle of those, not a real large parcel in comparison to the other neighborhoods. And we would like to keep it R3 or R4. We're concerned, I'm concerned about the tree canopy. Again, all that many acres across the road that's been cut down already. We did meet with the developer, and they say they're working on stormwater plans. My understanding is they have a couple of options instead of the ones just in the photos that you've seen. They have another option that we were told about this evening to move the detention pond to the other side of the development. I'm opposed, period, to this development, but if it's approved, I'd like to ask that they do move the detention pond to the other side so that we're not playing with the stormwater that's already coming into our yards. We've been dealing with that for a long time. We kind of have it under control, and we'd rather leave it alone for now. And the tree canopy. Those are my main concerns, and I have at least 3 other neighbors here express theirs. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Like Sarah said, this development is between an R3 neighborhood that was developed in the 1950s and a R4 neighborhood developed in the 1990s. They're all single family on either side, and this development is going to be a multifamily. stuck in the middle of them. It's going to be like a little pie wedge going between them. It won't fit in with the aesthetics of the neighborhood. It's going to stand out, and being changed to a R8, we're just not happy with that idea. And it's going to add to the traffic flow, because if you see right now, Old Plank Road feeds out to a 4-lane Bellhaven Boulevard. That's going to add probably 54 to 100 more cars, and there are several accidents there regularly just because of the amount of traffic coming down Bellhaven at the time, or Brookshire, whichever one you want to call it. So we're adamantly opposed to this, and we understand that it's the city's trying to get more houses per acre. Just, I don't know why, but that's what it's doing. But this neighborhood does not fit in with the aesthetics of the neighborhoods on either side of it, and we oppose it dramatically. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Thanks for the time. My name's Donald Obst. I live in the little notch there. I've been living there about a little bit over 20 years. And my main concerns would be stormwater. That's a lot, like I hear that a lot. Like currently it's a wooded site, and it's going to be proposed to be mostly impervious with asphalt and shingles. So typically the stormwater would need to drain into an existing stormwater infrastructure, and with the 2 ponds they have proposed, one of them would just be drained, it would flow off into our backyards. So that's one main concern. If that happens, it's already, I don't know, 9 or so acres that drain into that. It could lead to more flooding, creation of potential wetlands, and then that could potentially cause our property harm if our yards become any more wet than they already are. Secondly, traffic concerns. This is kind of turned into a little hot spot of development, and Old Plank Road is already overcrowded. I'm not sure if it's overcapacity, but it's certainly closed. People do go very fast down the road. It's a pretty tight turning 2-lane road. So with the Bell Terra across the street, that's 170 units. This would be another 50 some. There's proposals in the future to extend Fred D. Alexander from Brookshire over to Oakdale Road with enough more additional projects. So it's like each individual like a straw on the camel's back. So each of these developments, I think, is overloading the DOT and the current traffic that we have in the site. So stormwater, that's the main one. So our properties are not devalued, and then DOT with the increased traffic. And I think that's about all I have. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Grant. You have 2 minutes for a rebuttal.
Thank you. We are committed to adjusting the stormwater in the way we discussed before this meeting, so our revised plan will have the single pond, which was moved to where the residents wanted to see it happen. Stormwater regulations prevent us from being able to create a situation where we would cause flooding or wetlands on someone else's property. So we will be able to work through any of those stormwater issues or concerns. We also believe that with the 50-foot buffer around the periphery of the site and the fencing, we're trying to minimize the visual impact. Again, we've talked about this a lot tonight. We're in the period of transition. The existing zoning of R3 is essentially going away, and when that happens, you would be able to develop townhomes on this entire site. So we're trying to meet somewhere in the middle with that balance of open space, addressing the stormwater issues, and providing fencing that you wouldn't get during a by right development under the new UDO. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from council?
Move close.
Second.
We have a motion that's been made and properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? That we will move on to item number 46, rezoning petition 2022-128 by Kinger Homes LLC on approximately 2.05 acres on the west side of Mallard Creek Road, south of Silver Birch Drive, and west of David Taylor Drive in Council District 4, Ms. Johnson's district. The current zoning is R3 single-family residential, and the proposed zoning is R8 MF multifamily residential conditional. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to transportation and urban forestry. and requested technical revisions. This petition does not have any opposition, so after staff's presentation, petitioner will have 3 minutes.
Before we get started on this one, just a quick question, moment of housekeeping. For the previous petition, did we confirm the vested rights by the petitioner had been removed?
I did not.
Okay. Just wanted to confirm that wasn't part of the request. I know we read that in early on, but that 5-year vesting isn't on the plan. It was probably an error on our part, including it into the packet. So just wanted to confirm that.
We can talk to the petitioner about it between now and the decision.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. 2022-128, it's just over 2 acres on Mallard Creek Road, south of Silver Birch Drive, west of David Taylor Drive. 15 to the rear, B1 and institutional north and south, R3 across the road there on Mallard Creek. And the adopted place type is for neighborhood 1. You can see the adjacency is neighborhood 2, back there off of Summercroft Lane. The proposal is for up to 16 townhome units, no more than 5 units per building, would provide a 30-foot setback along Mallard Creek Road and a 40-foot rear yard, as well as a 20-foot side yard. Does dedicate a minimum of 50% of the site to open space. It also dedicates 15% of the site, to tree safe. Access would be provided from Mallard Creek Road, and then we'd have internal private drives for individual unit access. Would commit to a 12-foot multi-use path, an 8-foot planting strip along Mallard Creek, and then 5-foot sidewalks along all internal private drives. Each residential entrance will also have a walkway connection to those sidewalks. Lighting fixtures will be fully capped and shielded at a max height of 21 feet. 2-car garage would be provided for each unit, as well as architectural standards committing to primary building materials, usable porches and stoops, raised residential entrances, pitched roofs, garage door treatments, and individual unit walkways. Staff does recommend approval of this petition, does have some outstanding issues related to transportation and urban forestry, as well as some technical revisions to resolve. As mentioned, it is inconsistent with the 2040 policy map recommendation for neighborhood 1. We'll be happy to take any questions following the petitioner's presentation on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Sagadine and Travis Gingras, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Paul Sagadin, representing King Homes. I'll make sure I'm good on here. Basically, as far as the site, fairly simple, we think. 2 acres, 16 single-family attached. The proposal is just for that. Have connected with DOT, the community, and the neighborhood business. We knew that going through some rezonings there recently, there were some water concerns, so we've worked with providing a stormwater solution to improve the drainage patterns for the neighboring commercial building. We've also worked with DOT on the bus stop and make sure that we had the 12-foot multi-use path. And as far as the HOA questions and values were the only questions from the public meeting, and we addressed all of those and answered those questions. So pretty straightforward. Everything seems to be in the right direction, but if any questions, we're happy to answer.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the council? Ms. Johnson?
I'm sorry. I could barely hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. And we can certainly meet offline, but you said that there was a community meeting. Was there any opposition by the residents?
No, just some folks came out from a neighborhood down the road that had questions about if the HOAs were going to be joined, because we have another project that we just rezoned down the street, and they were asking if it was all going to be one part, and we said no, those would not be connected.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Close. Second, there's a motion to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Hear none. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 47, rezoning petition 2022-132 by Fall Line Development Incorporated, located on approximately 17.95 acres on the southeast intersection of IBM Drive and University Point Boulevard, west of Interstate 85 and north of University City Boulevard in Council District 4, Ms. Johnson's district. The current zoning is RE2 research, and the proposed zoning is R17MF, multifamily residential conditional. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to transportation. There are no speakers in opposition, so after staff's presentation, petitioner will have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. 2022-132, as mentioned, it's just under 18 acres on IBM Drive and University Point Boulevard, just west of I-85. Existing zoning is RE2, the Research District, and the proposed zoning is R17 MF, multifamily conditional. The adopted place type does call for a community activity center in this location, surrounded by some campus uses and some additional community activity center on the other side of I-85. The proposal is for up to 260 multifamily residential dwelling units. That comes in about 14 and a half dwelling units per acre. Vehicular access to the site is proposed from IBM Drive and University Point Boulevard, as generally depicted on the plan. Would construct a 12-foot multi-use path with an 8-foot planting strip along IBM Drive. Architectural design standards relate to exterior building materials, roof pitches, pedestrian scale lighting, horizontal and vertical facade articulation, limitation of blank walls, et cetera, have been included into the conditional notes. Would limit building height to a maximum of 80 feet. That's generally consistent with some of the multifamily projects we've seen just to the north of this on IBM Drive. Would prohibit parking areas between the building and the existing street frontages. Also would dedicate a 60-foot easement to Mecklenburg County Park and Rec for the portion of future Adobe Creek Greenway alignment through the site. That's also consistent with those petitions we've seen to the north as well. So hopefully get a good continuation of that Greenway corridor for Mecklenburg County. Would also provide a minimum of 4,500 square feet of plaza amenity space as generally depicted on the site plan, and would describe site lighting standards to protect against adjacent properties and rights away from any glare or light spillover. Staff does recommend approval of this petition. Do have some outstanding issues related to transportation to be resolved. It is consistent with the 2040 policy map recommendation for Community Activity Center, and we'll be happy to take any questions following the petitioner's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colin Brown, Brittany Lynch, Brian Wise, and Dan Blackman, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, zoning committee members. Colin Brown on behalf of the petitioner. Mr. Wise, the petitioner, is here if you have questions. Interesting site up in the University City area. I've talked to Councilmember Johnson about a few of these. This is one that has been a bit of an orphan, but NCDOT and CDOT are making improvements in the area. A bridge was created across 85 that really connects this property up to, if you know, the Bellgate development, the Walmart on North Tryon. So it really gives very good proximity to them. Walking distance to 3 CMS campuses, elementary, middle, and high school, and some great employment opportunities. So this is kind of checking some of the boxes that we're talking about. With the themes that we've talked about tonight, this is consistent. This might actually be seen as a little bit less intensity than could be allowed under the new ordinance and the 2040 plan. As Dave mentioned, already have commitments in for improved sidewalks along the streetscapes, as well as a dedication to Parks and Rec for a greenway connection. And to Ms. Johnson's point earlier, a traffic study was not required on this petition, but CDOT has looked at the area and is making some requests from the developer, including some road widening and some turn lane installation, which our team is working on in our updated plan, which will go to zoning committee. So happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council?
Move to close. Second.
Motion to close and properly second. Any comments? Hear none. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposition? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 48. Rezoning petition 2022-142 by EC Legacy Properties, LLC, for approximately 1.57 acres at the northeast intersection of Albemarle Road and Mallard Drive, south of Rainbow Drive, Council District 5, Ms. Molina's district. The current zoning is R3 single-family residential, and the proposed zoning is UR2 urban residential conditional. Staff does not recommend approval of this petition in its current form. After staff's presentation, the petitioner will have 10 minutes to present.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. 2022-142, it's 1.57 acres on Albemarle and Mallard Drive. It is currently zoned R3, and they are proposing to rezone it to UR2 conditional. Neighborhood 1 is the policy map recommendation. This proposal is for up to 32 apartments in a single building. That comes in at about 20.38 units per acre. The associated parking areas also surrounding the proposed building would limit the use to limit the age of each resident to 55 and older, and also limits resident occupancy to those defined as low income by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, would allow residents to live in their units for an undefined and continuous length of time, would limit building height to a maximum of 60 feet, proposes ingress and egress from Mallard Drive, does illustrate a potential security gate at entrance and potential gates where internal sidewalks connect to sidewalk systems along Albemarle and Mallard Roads. Also illustrates a 12-foot multi-use path and 8-foot planting strip along Albemarle, as well as a 6-foot sidewalk and 8-foot planting strip along Mallard Drive. A 16-foot Class C buffer is being proposed along property lines abutting single-family residential use and zoning. That's indicated in that green area just on the north side of the plan. Also illustrates a possible fence around the perimeter of the property and does note that passive recreation proposed through the use of interconnected sidewalks for walking, exercise, as well as some benches along the stormwater pond for observing wildlife and nature. Staff does not, again, recommend approval of this petition in its current form. We just have some outstanding issues related to environment and some site and building design items that are needed for us to continue to reevaluate our recommendation. With that, it is also inconsistent with the policy map recommendation for Neighborhood 1. But we will continue to work with the petitioner and work with the site plan to try and resolve those outstanding issues and, again, continue to evaluate our recommendation on this one. So with that, we'll turn it over to the petitioner and take any questions you may have following the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Matthew Jones, Sherelle Howard, and Eliza Hammond, you have 10 minutes combined.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. My name is Matthew Jones. I'm Principal Engineer at Jones Civil Design. So I'm here to consult and answer any questions related to site planning or civil engineering. Also with me, the owner petitioner, Eliza Hammond, and Representative Sherelle is here with us as well, owner's representative. And originally, we were on for the agenda last month. We did defer. We asked for deferral because staff asked for some recommendations, mainly related to multi-use paths, some additional curb. We addressed those concerns. We added some detail, added a walking trail on the property as well. We do still have some outstanding issues, as Dave mentioned, that staff is requesting some updates to notes and some more clarity. We did not want to ask for deferral again. We wanted to come here and get before council, see if there were any questions before we continue too much further with this petition. But we will be addressing those concerns and working with staff to provide the additional detail for this project. We do have on the plan, as you see, stormwater control. Again, has been mentioned in other applications earlier tonight. The project, as it proposes to pave and add buildings, will not be allowed to discharge stormwater at a rate any higher than its current existing condition. We do have tree save, the allowed tree save and recommended requested tree save by City of Charlotte ordinance shown on the property. So some tree canopy will be removed, as is part of development in a city like this, but we are saving as much as we can and adding a buffer against the single-family residential units in the back. We do feel that this project will improve this area, will benefit the area. Traffic is not that great a concern, as we are on the corner of Albemarle Road and not accessing really through a neighborhood or through another property. And again, this project is aimed at affordable housing and age targeted to provide some options for people to live in this area. If you have any questions, we can answer those.
Thank you.
He got one. He can go first.
As it stands right now, do you expect to get to a point where the staff will recommend this by the time it comes up for a vote?
I would think that'd be better answered by staff.
Yeah, I feel like we're confident we'll be able to get these issues resolved and present a project.
You're working on these issues, and you expect to be able to sort them out?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Molina.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just got a really quick question. I see that you had a community meeting with 12 people in attendance. What type of feedback did you get from the community?
It was really a lot of questions. A lot of people weren't sure what the age targeted meant. They weren't sure what the income aspect of this meant, being affordable housing, so they asked those kind of questions. There were some concerns about stormwater, which we did mention exactly what's in the Charlotte Stormwater Ordinance, that we cannot over discharge. There weren't a lot of detailed questions. It was more informative. They were showing up just to hear what was going on and really quite interested. We did have one gentleman who was approaching that age, and we offered that he could certainly move in there if he desired.
Okay. No, that's really all I'm interested in, because as many of my colleagues have said throughout the night, it's kind of, I'm extremely happy about the confidence that, first of all, this would be something for our aging population, which, I think I've received feedback after feedback that that's something that our community is more interested in, because we do have an aging population in our community. Actually, I'm looking at 2 of our residents that are here tonight, and I'm just kind of winking at them, thinking of some of the feedback that I've gotten recently. So I'm pretty happy about just the potential of the petition, and my hope is, post-meeting, I intend to follow up with some people that I know that are in that area, just to kind of get a pulse from the community and how they feel about it.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for staff. One answer might be a kind of more general follow-up on from a policy position, but what about this this petition led it to get a position where staff does not recommend approval, as opposed to what we often see that staff does recommend approval upon resolution of outstanding issues. It seems like you have outstanding issues that you expect to be resolved, so why such a drastic take?
Just some clarification on some of the buffer requirements, particularly the Class C buffer to the back. Are we going to include fencing? Are we going to include plantings? There were just some real discrepancies that we felt were critical components of the project. Buffering against single-family adjacent, particularly when you have a multifamily building like this, that's critical for us. We still have some I would say some maybe disagreement over the height. They're proposing 60, we've requested 50, so we need to kind of work through that and make sure that 60, if that's what's going to be proposed, is staff okay with that? We'd prefer to see that at 50 feet. That provides a little bit better transition back to some of those single-family uses on Mallard Drive. So there's just a few items that we felt were still critical for us to get resolved that went beyond just an outstanding issue that needs to be resolved, because if they don't get resolved, then we don't feel like we'd be able to support the petition. So that's why we're saying it's not quite there in current form, because those issues really need to get resolved and be very clear before we get to zoning committee in 2 weeks. So that's the track we're on. I feel like we're going to be able to get those resolved and get everything worked out and have a different potential recommendation for this one moving forward. But I think the project overall, we see value and benefit to that, particularly as Councilmember Molina stated, this is a type of product that we do need, not just in this area, but throughout Charlotte. So we certainly see the benefits of that, and we'd like to be, supportive of a project that meets that need. We just need to get a few more details ironed out that went a little bit beyond just trying to get them resolved as an outstanding issue.
All right. Thank you, and like I said, we could follow up a little more in depth after, perhaps. Any other questions or comments?
Motion to close.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor, close the public hearing, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Seeing none, we will move along to the final hearing of the night. Agenda item number 49, rezoning petition 2022-150 by Lakeisha Stevenson, located on approximately .88 acres on the south side of Hickory Grove Road, east of East WT Harris Boulevard and south of Robinson Church Road in Council District 5, Ms. Molina's district. And the current zoning is R3 single-family residential, and the proposed zoning is R8 single-family residential. Staff recommends approval of this petition. This petition does have opposition from the community. So after staff's presentation, the petitioner will have 10 minutes to present.
Okay, thank you. 2022-150, it's just about .88 acres on Hickory Grove Road, just east of East WT Harris Boulevard and south of Robinson Church Road. It's currently zoned R3, and the proposal is to rezone to R8. You can see we do have some R8 zoning just almost adjacent to this on the other side of Hickory Grove Road, over there on Weaver Lane and Newton Creek Drive. Adopted place type is for Neighborhood 1. And the staff recommendations is a conventional petition. We do recommend approval of this petition. There are no outstanding issues, no site plan to consider on this one, again, being that it's conventional R8. It is consistent with the 2040 policy map recommendation for Neighborhood 1, and R8 district does translate to a Neighborhood 1 district. So with that, we will take any questions following presentations by the petitioner and the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lakeisha Stevenson, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members, Zoning Committee, and supporting staff. I am Lakeisha Stevenson, and I am available to answer any questions or concerns.
Thank you very much. Deborah Dryden, you have 10 minutes to speak against.
Good evening. Thank you all for staying. It's fun to be last. Ms.
Save the
Molina?
best for last.
Save the best for last, that's right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. My concerns are, one, that there is no site plan for this development. They're just asking for a rezoning. There's been no contact with the community that I'm aware of, and I know it's not required because they don't have a site plan. My biggest concerns is the property fronts, as you can see from this depiction, Market Street. On the one side of Market Street is a church, and on the other side is a recreational building that belongs to the church. There's no traffic light there. You'll see if you go 50 yards, there's Highland Avenue. On the other side of Highland Avenue is an elementary school. We have been asking for a traffic light at the Highland Avenue intersection for approximately 25 years because there's lots of accidents there and nothing's ever been done. The next is it's in a curve. You can see the curve at the road. Now what happens once you cross Harris Boulevard and come down to that, it narrows from two lanes to one lane and a turn lane, and the turn lane turns into Highland Avenue where the school is. Coming toward Harris Boulevard, you'll notice at the school it's a single lane on Hickory Grove Road, but it turns into two lanes right at the intersection of Highland Avenue. So my concerns were more infrastructure and roads. I mean, I don't mind that they're going to put townhomes in there or single-family homes. That's not the problem. It's the infrastructure and the streets. People coming in and out of there, whatever they put, it's going to be a terrible, terrible traffic situation because it's within 50 yards of another major intersection that neither one of them have a traffic light. And they have, as they pointed out, they have just built a whole set of condominiums and townhomes right across the street, diagonal. So our concerns about the entry and exit of the property, we request a light at Highland Avenue near the school, and we hope that because turn lanes are not going to help, because there's no space for turn lanes. And if you mitigate it with a concrete barrier, then it's going to limit how people can turn and exit onto Hickory Grove Road. So those are my concerns. I hope that the developer, Ms. Stevenson, will reach out to the community and share what she plans to do with this site. It's kind of disconcerting. I've listened to all these petitions all night, and everybody's had a site plan except this one. And so they're asking you to rezone something without a site plan, without any knowledge of what's going to be put there. So we would like some further information, and I appreciate your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Ms. Stevenson, you have 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you. As it relates to site plans, we are still in the preliminary stages. We have met with the civil engineer. We have also met with the architect. The civil engineer, our preliminary plans is to have one driveway. It'll be 2 buildings, 4 units in each building. It'll kind of be like a half circle that they'll come out on, so it's not coming out in 8 individual driveways, but that is still preliminary. I was told that I could be here without my site plans, hence I'm here. Whatever's instructed of us to do via the city, we will do that.
Point of order.
Yep. We probably
I just wanted to
yeah.
remind the council that since it's conventional, even though she's giving you specifics, she's allowed to do anything under the, is it R8?
R8, yes, ma'am.
R8 zoning.
Thank you.
Okay, it is, again, 2 buildings, 4 units in each building, townhomes. So that's what our plans will be based on.
Thank you very much. And I was going to mention that just to explain to Ms. Dryden, when you make a conventional rezoning, they're asking for every use that is specifically under that conventional district. If you have a condition, you want to do something that generally fits a zoning district, but might want to do something that is not specifically allowed, you can go through the conditional zoning process. But under that process, you have to submit it because it doesn't specifically ascribe to those conventional zoning districts. So it's completely in bounds and in order. So I just wanted to explain. Yeah.
Hey, bud. Ma'am, we can't discuss it. Sorry.
Any questions, comments from Ms. Molina?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just, first of all, I want to say, actually, she's a member of one of our staple neighborhoods in East Charlotte, the East Charlotte Community of Neighbors, and they are extremely active and very important to the East Side. So thank you for serving our community. I really appreciate what you do. I hear you. And if there's anything that we can discuss between now and when there needs to be a decision, I'm all ears for you and the petitioner. I feel like, this isn't yes or no in any direction, but this is just to say that, my goal as someone who serves as that kind of intermediary is to see if there's somewhere we can meet in the middle. So offline, I'll be discussing with staff to see what can and can't be done. I don't proclaim to be a planning professional, so I'll be depending upon their guidance to guide me in what's possible, but I feel like that we can come to a healthy conclusion for both parties. So thank you for coming out today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for serving our community. I appreciate you both. And thank you for, as you see, we don't get a whole lot of action lately on the East Side, so I'm almost excited when I see people. I'm like, when I see some, like my colleague sitting here next to me, like she's loaded, so I'm like, most of my work is really like aligning with them to, learn through them because they really get a lot of the petitions. So we are not anti-development on the East Side. We definitely have a lot of fully invested and concerned neighbors in East Charlotte, and I, don't want to, sound like that anyone on our side is like anti-anything. We just, it's a mutual love and respect. So thank you for being here today as well.
Understood. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Second.
Motion to close the public hearing is made and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Hearing none. Before we adjourn the meeting, I just recognize Mr. Driggs.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to say before we leave tonight, we've had a pretty pointed discussion about some issues we're grappling with and some remarks to the staff. And I want you guys to understand, we approved the rules and we were involved in the development of these rules. A lot of this is on us. It's on us to figure it out. So we are in a difficult situation right now, but do appreciate your work and hope that you'll work with us to address this problem of constantly recommending approval even though not consistent. So just keep at it, all right? And again, there needs to be something from us as well to try to fix this. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just say that we've heard that loud and clear from conversations here and conversations earlier today, and we are already talking about getting to work and getting you some things that can help to navigate the ship a little bit more clearly.
And despite all that, we love you.
Yes, you're good guys, okay? So take it personally.
Love you.
It's not personal.
Motion
to adjourn?
Second. All in favor? Raise your hand. Get out of here. Thank you.